But you see the numbers. The numbers are so disproportionate. They're so unfair. At the same time, we will establish a minimum baseline tariff of 10%. You notice that on the chart, and that'll be on other countries to help rebuild our economy and to prevent cheating. So we're going to have a minimum of cheating, and we're going to be very severe on the people that at the gate that watch the tariffs and watch the product coming in, because there's been a lot of bad things happening at the gate.
Administration is market reaction after hours. I've never seen anything like it. This, I think, fair to say, is worse than the worst case scenario of the tariffs that many in the market expected the president to impose. You laid out a number of the percentages there, and there's some question of how the administration calculated the percentages that they're responding to in each of these cases. Are they adding in value-added taxes? He talked about, non-tariff barriers as well. So I think while many were hoping that this would eliminate uncertainty, there's going to be more uncertainty in the market. And from those watching policy tomorrow on, well, if countries push back on how these non-tariff barriers were calculated, will there be wiggle room here? Exactly when do these go into effect? How quickly are companies going to have to adjust their pricing? So many questions.
That was reporting immediately after Donald Trump initiated his trade war against the entire world. I've never seen anything like it. Trillions of dollars evaporated from the stock market almost immediately. And the rest of the world is kind of in this unclear state of what is taking place with the US. Some countries are pushing back on this, China, for example. You have other countries that are more so acquiescing, but it's clear that Trump did take economics 101. And this is going to be higher costs for all of us. My guest is here, though, so I want to get to my guest. We are joined, there he is, the man of the hour, Laith Marouf. Laith Marouf, I'm sorry, I'm very congested. I have these infirmities are trying to take me down, but I'm still here nonetheless. Laith Marouf, award-winning multimedia producer and broadcasting law consultant. Laith, welcome to the show, man. How you doing this morning? You doing okay?
I'm doing great. Thank you very much, Jamal, for having me.
No, man, thank you for joining me. I want to get into what is something that was rather surprising. In Syria, and correct me if I'm wrong on this, Israel was running a convoy through right here. DD Geopolitics is hitting this. So apparently Israel ran a convoy through Syria with local Syrian tribes getting involved to attack the convoy. Now, it is well known that Jelani hasn't fired a shot in anger at the Israelis, despite the fact that he's saying he's, this Muslim caliphate, and that he's now ruler of a country that he doesn't necessarily protect from Israeli aggression or expansion into the country itself. Is this story correct? I mean, this seemed like a local resistance that sprang up. What is it, in Nawa, I guess? Where it says large number of Syrian locals have mobilized in order to push back on the Israeli occupation of that land. Do you have any information on this? I just saw the story this morning. That's why I didn't say anything about it beforehand. I'm sorry.
Yes. So Nawa is in the Daraa province. Daraa is just on the border with Jordan. And the area we're talking about is in the basin of the Yarmouk River that kind of defines the border between Lebanon, Jordan, and Syria. The Israelis, over the last 3 months, the area that they have occupied in both Quneitra province, that's the foothills of the Golan Heights, Dar'a, and the countryside of Damascus. In this area that they've occupied, they've already ethnically cleansed the land. They expelled all the local inhabitants. We're talking around 200-something thousand people have already been expelled. So anyone that was kind of ambivalent about mounting resistance to the Israelis in the south of Syria have now seen what will happen if the Israeli military enters your village or town. The outcome is clear. You're going to be expelled from your land, and the world is not going to even report one word about it in mainstream media. So it was inevitable that the population of the southern parts of Syria will carry arms individually, and that there will be a rise of a local resistance, especially given that the Wahhabi death squads that are occupying Damascus and declare themselves the government, the HTS, are agents of the Mossad, agents of CIA, and they will not be resisting the dismantlement of Syria or the occupation of its land or the depopulation of its territory. As we see, the HTS itself is involved in a very similar program in the west of the country, in the coast, in Latakia, Tartus, Hama, and Homs, where the HTS is also ethnically cleansing villages and towns of their Alawi, Shia, and Christian populations. And so these are these two programs are joined together and have been planned together: the ethnic cleansing of HTS and the ethnic cleansing of the Zionists in Syria. So clearly the Zionists were surprised at this ambush that was conducted by the locals, and some of their soldiers are injured, and they retaliated with a mass bombardment campaign of South Syria, the Dar'a province. And simultaneously, by the way, this is another story, the Turkish military has been expanding its presence in Syria and were setting up to control and occupy the T4 airport and base beside Palmyra in the desert of Syria. And yesterday, part of the bombardment that the Zionists conducted was not only in the south of Syria, but they conducted 50 air raids in Damascus, Hama, and Homs, where the T4 base is. They destroyed completely the military airport of Hama and the T4. And there's already reports of at least 4 Turkish engineers that were with the occupying force trying to fix up the T4 to fit the needs of the Turkish military. Those 4 engineers are killed. We haven't heard one word from Turkey about this. Which shows you again. So there's a rivalry happening between Turkey and Israel, both of which are vassals of the United States, over the loot of Syria. And as we see, the Israelis are not wanting Turkey to get close to the southern parts of Syria.
From my understanding, Turkey was setting up air defenses in Syria in order to prevent these type of air raids over Syria. But correct me if I'm wrong. Am I missing that story?
Yeah, you are right. But you see, both of them are using the same systems. The air defenses that Turkey has are already in the hands of Israel, the same models. And, they know how to get around it. And most probably, the Americans have given Israel the back door to everything, like they've given them the back door to our iPhones and our WhatsApp. I'm sure Israel has backdoors to any of the NATO systems. And so Turkey is stupid that it hasn't developed its own air defenses like Iran did.
Yeah. One of the other stories I wanted to hit, and I'm glad you brought up HTS. Al-Jilani is apparently making peace overtures to Israel, apparently trying to normalize relations with Israel as it bombs Damascus, which is that is a mind-blowing thing, right? You're claiming yourself ruler of a particular country. Israel is bombing the country, and your response is, hey, let's make diplomatic relations. This is in addition to apparently conversations that Jilani is apparently going to have with Donald Trump or someone within the Trump administration. And of course, trying to make peace overtures to Europe, etc. There is an hypothesis, and I think the hypothesis has legs, that because Egypt and Jordan wouldn't take the Palestinians that the Israelis are effectively killing en masse, that a deal could be made with Jilani to port them into Syria. Meaning, okay, Egypt's not going to take them, Jordan's not going to take them, but we can take them to Syria since Jilani is effectively a puppet of these forces anyway. What's your take on that? I mean, do you think that has legs? Do you think that's a no-go nonsense? Give me your thoughts.
I mean, look, where would the Israelis drop the Palestinian population? In Syria. And clearly Syria has, as currently even Jolani has no control of the territory and or the monopoly on the use of force within the borders of Syria. Therefore, if you go and drop, this is why it's illogical, and it's not going to happen. Not because Jolani wouldn't, kiss any Zionist behind and eat their feces if they asked him to, but the Israelis themselves would not do it because Syria is a circus right now. It's a no man's land, and if you drop Palestinians there, millions of them. Of course, they're going to carry arms, and you're going to have a headache from within Syria that cannot control its own territory or force the Palestinians to disarm, right? So they'd rather that the Palestinians, if they are expelled to neighboring countries, that they are expelled into vassal countries that are dictatorships that have full control of the use of violence within their territory, like Jordan and Egypt, and or expel them to faraway lands like Madagascar and or Indonesia. This is like actually right now options that the Zionists are putting out in their media, sending the Palestinians to Madagascar. Okay, so geographic distance. So in reality, all this talk about expelling the Palestinians, because it is not going to happen in either Jordan or Egypt, it means it's not going to happen, period. Therefore, we see the return to the genocidal policy. And that's what we're witnessing together happening in Gaza right now, the return to full genocide in broad daylight.
Is Israel really going to try to kill 1.2 million or 1.4 or 1.6, whatever that number is, Palestinians? And if not, what is the point of this? Meaning, I understood, look, I get it if the goal is, okay, we're going to make like so inhospitable that people are going to leave. Now, this is something that Netanyahu put out. He even said, look, we're not hiding the ball anymore. We're not pretending. Our job or our goal is to get people to voluntarily leave as we murder and slaughter on those people. Is that even possible for people to quote unquote voluntarily leave, even though we know it's not voluntary? If you're killing people and, rape, killing, murder, etc., that's not voluntary. But where would they go? It's this part that completely confuses me. Egypt is not going to take them. Jordan is not going to take them. The people are effectively stuck in an open air ghetto. Where are they supposed to go? And if you're not going to kill 1.4 million people, then what is the point of this?
I personally think that they will kill all 2 million Palestinians in Gaza if they're not stopped. I am 100% sure of that. And I give you the evidence right now. I mean, for 17 months, the genocide is ongoing. And now we got to a point where it's not even in the headlines in the West, and the Zionists are openly talking about genocide and openly acting genocide without hiding it anymore or lying about it anymore, because there's no repercussion, because the Western capitals within the imperial domains are willing to burn their own countries to at the altar of Zionism if they are asked to do so. They'll as we see in the United States, and will jail their own and mass deport, all for the eyes of Israel. Okay, so look at what happened 2 nights ago. There was 16 Red Cross and nurses and paramedics kidnapped from the hospital of the Red Cross and tortured, tied up, stripped naked. And when another group of paramedics in Red Cross ambulance came to save them, they were also kidnapped, beaten, tied up, and then they were all executed one by one with bullets to the head and buried in a mass grave with the ambulance itself. Okay, so this is, I mean, honestly.
By the way, this is the footage,
and
just
the
for the audience to know.
Yeah.
This is the ambulance that they're pulling out of the mass grave with the workers who apparently had their hands tied behind their backs after being executed by the Israelis.
Yeah, so I mean, the Nazis and Hitler hid the Holocaust and their genocide of Jewish and other peoples in Europe. They were not displaying it proudly. I think the Zionists, and they rightly conclude this, that the whole West is behind them and they can enact genocide and proudly promote it as long as nobody is gonna fight them. Okay, if they can kill anybody and everybody that fights them anywhere and round up citizens of Western countries at their own order, at their behest, and destroy all the educational system and graduate studies programs that the U.S. is proud of, destroy media rights, destroy freedom of speech, everything that could all be done for Israel at its behest. So why would they stop the genocide? Until there is somebody who can force them to stop it, it will not stop.
But you don't see that. Look, I got to be honest, I've been shocked at this myself. I didn't think this could happen. My point of view of the world has fundamentally changed over this. I mean, the Houthis, and let's get to the Houthis for a moment. Nasrallah has been still firing shots. Apparently, they knocked down multiple drones from the United States. They've been firing at aircraft carriers that have been out in the Red Sea. And this is despite the attacks that the U.S. has been launching. Many of these attacks aren't even at military targets. Water target, for example, took out water for thousands of people. Give me your thoughts on this. I mean, they have been trying, like consistently trying to, let's say, create at the very least a hedge in a way that no other Arab Muslim country has even attempted.
Yeah, and they have, I think, been achieving remarkable things. And, this is the power of geography. Look at the geography and obviously the will of the people, but look at the geography of Yemen that creates this will, okay? It's a mountainous country, and it's sitting on one of the most important waterways in the world, and it's because of those two things and its ingenuity of its people are able to right now project power against American naval prowess. And so, in the last 72 hours, 2 MQ-9 drones. Now I think it's 17 or 18 drones in in a year and a half.
Mhm.
This is, I think it's like over $500 million in drones that the US lost. Close to half of its fleet of MQ-9s have been down now by Yemen. The US doesn't have many of these. You think they have hundreds of them? They don't. Okay, so it's and of course they are able to hit the aircraft carriers, the destroyers, the frigates, and hit targets inside the Zionist colony, avoiding the THAAD and the David Sling and every other, the Arrow system and Iron Dome and everything. So this is important because now we can see that the United States, if it wants to go to war with Iran, listens from what happened in Yemen.
Mhm.
Number one is the American Navy is an easy target. If Yemen is able to hit it with this limited number of missiles and supplies and what have you, what does thousands of hypersonic missiles that that Iran has will do to American navies and bases in the region? So clearly, the United States, if it enters into a war with Iran, it must expect that all its naval assets and all its bases in the region will be destroyed completely. Okay, and this means, you know, there's around 60,000 American soldiers in Western Asia, from Turkey to the Emirates or Oman, and a few other, you know, 1,000 more in the Horn of Africa. That those all will be immediate casualties. Okay, they will not survive any war with Iran. And this is why we see the Americans bringing in the B-2 and B-52 bombers to the Diego Garcia Island chain. Because right now, that's the only place that the US believes it can bombard Iran from, and that those aircrafts will somehow survive. And that's, you know, so it is a threatening gesture that Trump just did, and openly, you know, moving these B-2s and B-52s there. But the question is the United States willing to sacrifice 50,000 plus soldiers in a span of minutes to conduct this campaign?
That is the question. I mean, do you think Trump is bluffing on this with the idea of trying to get a better deal through the rule force in that sense? Because you're right. I mean, the reality of it is Iran could hit Israel directly at this point. I mean, they could take the gloves off. They could hit those American bases. They could hit Saudi oil fields and some of these other Quisling governments. From my understanding, Saudi Arabia, UAE, and some of the other states came together and effectively said, look, we're not going to allow our land or air to be used in order to hit Iran. Do you think Trump is bluffing on this? Because you're right, it is unpredictable in regards to where this spirals into.
Yeah, look, we have just heard a statement from American government officials saying that the body of laws that has been in effect, international laws since World War II, and the bodies of organizations that govern that are not good for the time that we live in today. Okay, they're not compatible. And we just saw Bulgaria, you know, withdraw from the ICC to allow Netanyahu. Sorry,
I thought that was Hungary.
Oh, sorry, Hungary. Sorry, it's neighbor Hungary. I'm sorry, I mix up sometimes between Hungary and Bulgaria. So Hungary withdraw from the ICC and to allow Netanyahu to land there on a visit. So I've been saying this for a year now, if not more, that we have entered a new era, that the United Nations and international laws that were created after World War II are now collapsing. And we're in the same moment right after World War I, when the League of Nations made it illegal to colonize, but while at the same time allowing the UK and France to have a mandate over the Arabic peoples, which pissed off Italy and Japan, and they said, well, it's colonization in another name mandate, and that's what it was. Palestine was being colonized. And we had the breakout of World War II, right? That's the collapse of the League of Nations system and the international laws that came. So right now, the United States and Israel are saying, we want to be able to occupy and colonize any land and to bombard any nation and kill any leader we wish to. And those laws of World War II, after World War II, the international law and the bodies of international organizing don't apply to us anymore. Therefore, we're going to lose all of these things. Right. Okay, so in this situation, it's clear that the United States is at war with anyone that challenges it. It's willing to go anywhere with these wars. And I believe Trump may sacrifice 50,000 American soldiers in the region. People see, let's go back to Syria for a second. What's happening between Turkey and Israel as a fight inside Syria? This shows you how, all of these even structures of NATO and imperial machinations that kept together something like Turkey and Israel and or the UK, France, Germany, Canada, and the US, all of those right now are going to collapse. Even NATO itself is going to collapse. Maybe EU is going to collapse. And there will be fierce competition. And you were mentioning the taxes when we came into
the tariffs.
The tariffs that Trump is putting on all of these countries that are, most of them are vassals or allies of the United States. Why is this happening? It's because the imperial arrangement was that the United States will allow lesser imperial powers that are within its domain, like France or Germany or the UK, to have access to its economy, make money out of selling products there, because the United States has dibs on the loot of the colonial holdings in Africa, Asia, and Latin America. But now the colonial holding extraction is not enough, okay? And therefore, now we see Trump putting all these tariffs on his own allies, former colonial powers, that that's the imperial relation between the major central capital, the Senate in the United States, in the Capitol Hill, and the lesser colonial or imperialist capitals like France, Paris, and London. That's collapsing. So there will be a fierce competition even between those over the loot of the weaker nations, okay? And we may see these fights breaking out that we never expected, like this fight between Turkey and Israel.
How far do you think that's going to go, by the way? When it was obvious that Istanbul was working with Israel as it was effectively decapitating in Syria, even though Erdogan did not want to admit to the fact and bitterly, it's like, oh, that wasn't me, I didn't do it. But Israel came out and effectively said, yeah, we were coordinating. There was coordination. There was obvious coordination on the ground. There was, however, concern by other parts, and some analysts pointed out that Turkey and Israel are now competing for the same territory, which is going to provoke a conflict between them two sooner rather than later. And I guess that's what we're seeing now. I guess the question is, how far do you think that's going to go?
I mean, right now Erdogan is dealing with too many things. Obviously, the internal uprising that's happening since the arrest of Istanbul's mayor,
Mhm.
and how loose the borders have become between Syria and Turkey, which is going to create a lot of headaches in terms of the movement of all of these Wahhabi death squads that will be harder and harder to monitor, even if you are the one that's moving them as Turkey, and or the organized crime and so forth, right?
Mhm.
And now he has 4 of his engineers killed. But obviously, Erdogan doesn't care about Turkish people and their lives. And there's a hierarchy in the worth of life. All humans are equal, but some humans are more equal than others, right? And so, Erdogan cannot expect that he'll be able to kill 4 Israeli engineers in return, for instance, right? So we'll see what happens there. I think Erdogan is just going to stay quiet. He's making too much money out of the Israeli economy to worry about 4 Turkish lives.
That is grotesque, to put it mildly, if that's true. I guess the thing is, Israel is continuing to expand in that region. As you pointed out, Turkish influence in Syria is also continuing to expand. At some point, they're going to share the same border, right? I mean, it just seems to be that this is leading to a crisis point, any way you look at it, where Erdogan is going to have to acknowledge something. I mean, for God's sake, last year he was out there screaming that Netanyahu was Hitler, right? And then ends up in coordination with that same quote unquote Hitler to steal Syrian territory. At some point, though, these borders are going to start rubbing against each other. Meaning, from my point of view, it seems the conflict is inevitable between the 2 countries. Or do you think I'm wrong on this?
It is very possible, and especially given that all these tariffs that Trump is putting on the vassals and allies is going to force these vassals and allies to find ways to loot other nations to make up for these tariffs. Okay, and therefore it's putting more emphasis on Turkey to loot more of Syria, loot more of Iraq, loot more of Armenia. Maybe loot more of Cyprus. Maybe see them have fights with Greece. So this fragmentation and the need of all of those different vassals to start, because Israel is not going to have this problem. Israel has never-ending blank check from all the West on its weapons, on its economy, on its funding, on everything. Okay, so it doesn't have the same worry as Turkey, which is going to have to find a replacement for the funds that are going to be gone with these tariffs. So the emphasis right now is on the rule of the jungle. How hungry will Erdogan get, and the elite in Turkey, will they be so bloodthirsty that they will attack Israel? I doubt it. I doubt it. They know the pecking order. There could be skirmishes here and there. It could be that Turkey helps local resistance get some weapons to fight Israel, okay, to keep it at bay. That could be happening. It could be that Turkey decides that Hezbollah should be allowed a stream of arms into Lebanon. Those are possibilities. But would I ever imagine Turkey fighting Israel? Maybe not in our lifetime.
Interesting. One last question. If Iran is attacked, would Israel become an immediate target from Iranian missiles?
I believe it will be. If I was somebody right now planning in the Iranian military, I would think further than that. I personally think that all the oil fields in the Arabian Peninsula should be burnt, that all the glass towers in Dubai, Abu Dhabi, and Riyadh should be taken down to the ground. The oil revenues for the last 80 years in the Arabian Peninsula have been financing the wars against the Arabic peoples and the subjugation of the Palestinians. It's been this backbone of Western economy that allows the West to project power into our region and have a gas station to park their militaries here. So a war with Israel today and 100 years ago should have been always, number one, targeted towards the local vassals. Before you can confront Israel, you have to cut all the resources and supply routes to it in the region from the vassals. And that's what much of the decolonization movement over the last 80 years in the region have been unable to do. You can't just expect to fight Israel directly while all its backers and suppliers are behind it, sitting comfortably.
No, that makes sense. I guess I understand that. I guess my thought was Iran has a missile capability that could decimate Israel. And my first thought was any attack on Iran, especially if Israel is assisting with it, Israel will be an immediate target of those missile systems by Iran, not to mention the other areas. But they've also threatened Saudi Arabia. I guess my thought is, would the relationship between, let's say, this budding relationship between Saudi Arabia, Iran, and some of the other quisling governments of the U.S. in that region, would that stop Iran from hitting those oil fields? Or you don't think so?
Well, I think that all this talk about Saudi, Emirates, Qatar not helping in an attack on Iran
It's nonsense.
Is nonsense, because obviously American flights and supply routes to Israel flew out from those countries during the genocide in Gaza and still do so, although they claim that they're not involved. But look, if Iran decides to attack Israel only, as a Palestinian, I would say Iran should drop 2 nukes over Palestine, even if that means the killing of all the Palestinians along with the Israelis. End it. 100 years of this genocide, there will be no more Israelis, and that will be the end of it. And then the 14 million Palestinians that are in the diaspora can come back and repopulate the land. But if you're going to have a war with Israel, it's clear that the Israelis and the Americans will be using nukes against Iran, and Iran should end it immediately with dropping 2 nukes over Israel and end the story. 100 years is enough.
Laith, always appreciate you, man. Laith Marouf, he's an award-winning multimedia producer and broadcasting law consultant. You can follow Laith on Twitter at Laith Marouf. Also, Laith, where can people find you also?
Yes, my Twitter has been nuked by the Zionists a couple of years ago. But
you have Free Palestine TV, correct?
Yes. So you can go to @TV Free Palestine. That's on Twitter. And our website is freepalestine.video, where you can find the links to all our other socials, watch the daily reports from the West Bank and Lebanon that we're producing, and donate if you can.
Very cool, man. Thank you. And be safe. You have a good one.
See you.
Bye-bye. All right. Shout out to Laith. Always appreciate him joining me. That is a strong point of view. That is a very strong point of view. I want to go back to the tariff thing. So this is, if Donald Trump wants a recession, this is the exact way to get it. And this is kind of an economics 101 thing from my understanding. So this is Trump announcing the tariffs yesterday to the shock of the economic markets that lost trillions of dollars within the course of like 15 minutes.
But you see the numbers. The numbers are so disproportionate. They're so unfair. At the same time, we will establish a minimum baseline tariff of 10%. You notice that on the chart, and that'll be on other countries to help rebuild our economy and to prevent cheating. So we're going to have a minimum of cheating, and we're going to be very severe on the people that at the gate that.
What's important about this is this idea that we're going to rebuild our economy with this. Trump seems to believe that companies are going to bring their companies back into the United States to avoid the tariffs. Okay, I'm very doubtful of that, considering Donald Trump is going to be out in a few years, and those companies may just grin and bear it from the standpoint of the tariffs. Also, he seems to believe that other governments are going to just kowtow to him on this. This is one of the things that he was holding up. I want you to see this, because I want you to see the amount of tariffs that he's waging on these countries. China, 60. Now, keep in mind, China already had tariffs on like 20%. So this adds to it. So China is at like 64% or some insane amount. There's a 10% base tariff on everything else. The EU, 20%, Vietnam, 46%, Japan, 24%, Taiwan, 32%, India, 26%, Thailand, 36%, South Korea, 25%, Switzerland, 31%, Indonesia, 32%, Malaysia, 24%, and the list goes on. The list goes on. Trump even put tariffs on penguins, believe it or not, because he's an idiot. Now, what this means is that they seem to be trying to do this with the idea of, we're going to collect all of this money and we're going to be able to give a tax cut. All right. Understand, though, that tax cut is going to go to the richest in this country, while we are going to be stuck paying the increase in costs, because a company that is getting hit with the tariff is not going to just say, oh, we'll just absorb this tariff. What they're going to do is increase the cost of that product in order to compensate for the tariff that is being put on that company. Now, Trump and his people can say, well, we don't care about Americans who have to pay higher costs. Well, they should just buy American cars. They should just buy whatever else. But understand, you're increasing costs across the board. We, us, poor, middle class, pay that cost. Full stop. The reason that Fox News came out with this propaganda piece, has everything to do with the fact that they know, A, the market was going to crash. B, we as Americans are going to be paying more costs. And this is going to affect the poor and the middle class more than anybody else.
And those 401k people who are depending, those retirees, all of that, just talking plain speak with them. Look, when this nation used to go to war, people in this country would support the war effort with their materials at home and making things for weaponry and all of that. We got to do 100% buy-in over this bumpy period. Just communicate.
Kaylee.
And those 401k people who are depending,
No. Just be clear. We're not at war. We're not at war. She's postulating this like, when we were in the Second World War, we were willing to sacrifice for the American. Okay, I get that. We're not at war. This is a goofball who randomly decided to do this, did not litigate this over the course of the election. And this is going to decimate, meaning the very purpose that people put Donald Trump in office was this notion that Trump is going to do good on the economy. Well, not so much. This is going to hit the poorest, the worst. This is going to grate on the middle class. When they're going to stores and buying products, their products are going to be higher. When they're going buying cars, their cars are going to be more expensive. When they're going to do anything, it's going to be more expensive. Now, it's possible that some of these countries come to Trump and try to make a deal, but China has effectively said, we're not taking a second fiddle to the United States on this. So they may put reciprocal tariffs. The EU, Ursula von der Leyen saying, we're not going to take it. So again, they may come up with their own reciprocal tariffs if they can't come up with a deal. If you want to know what the stock market did, it did this. It did this. It did that. That is not a positive indicator. There's the NASDAQ. This is not a positive indicator. And if you want to hear it from CNBC, I think they said the quiet part out loud right here.
Market reaction after hours, I've never seen anything like it. this, I think fair to say, is worse than the worst case scenario of the tariffs that many in the market expected the president to impose. You laid out a number of the percentages there. And there's some question of how the administration calculated the percentages that they're responding to.
Now, speaking of the calculations, it seems that the way Trump calculated these tariffs was to take imports divided by exports, especially when there was an imbalance. And whatever that number was, use that as a calculation for the tariff. Now, let me pull this up because somebody went through this and it is amazing how arbitrary and bizarre this actually is. So this gentleman right here, where's his name? Come on. Oh, by the way, if you want to hear Mad Money, Jim Cramer. So Jim Cramer was very bullish on Trump. He was one of those people who was like, oh, he's going to lower taxes. This is going to be fantastic. This administration is going to be amazing. This is Jim Cramer yesterday losing his mind over what Donald Trump is effectively doing.
The Trump administration. We have a market that was doing extremely well last year until the Trump administration showed a level of uncertainty that I can't recall any time since, are you ready, Ski Daddy, Jimmy Carter. We have declining inflation, except the president's putting on inflationary tariffs. We have incredibly low unemployment, except where it's caused by the Trump administration. We have a market that was doing extremely well last year until the Trump administration showed a level of uncertainty that I can't recall any time since, are you ready, Ski Daddy, Jimmy Carter.
Have Jim Cramer comparing Donald Trump to Jimmy Carter for how bad things actually are. Now, Trump is arguing that the Great Depression wouldn't have happened if indeed the tariffs were placed. Tariffs were placed during the Great Depression. In fact, tariffs were increased during the Great Depression. It only made it worse because it ended up increasing the cost of items across the board for typical Americans, especially the poor, and again, the middle class. If you are Elon Musk, you don't care, right? Like if you have $1 trillion or some ungodly sum of money that you don't deserve, then you don't really care if your items go up a little bit. If you are on minimum wage, if you have a kid to raise, if you have, I don't know, just a regular person pursuing your objectives, and you voted for Trump thinking, well, he is going to do great things for the economy and he's going to lower costs. I'm sorry, that's not the case. And to be very clear, Trump himself pointed out that in the short term, it may be rough. Why is he saying that? Because he understands that the tariffs are going to increase costs on Americans and inflation, by the way. This goes to the whole idea of recession fears that were effectively floating about. I would wager to you those recession fears are going to only go up and only spike. There are some people who think this is a great idea. I had a conversation with Mark Frost yesterday, and he pointed out that this is going to somehow damage BRICS. I think Mark is out of his mind. He is going to come on to the show tomorrow. No, I'm not an economist. I've taken Econ 101, and I know the basics of the stuff in regard to the way that tariffs are a tax. And Trump has just initiated one of the largest taxes on the American public that we have ever seen, despite the fact he doesn't necessarily want to call it a tax. He wants to call it a tariff. And again, just for the calculation. So it is believed that the calculation was done based on, okay, that's too complicated. The S&P drops $1.9 trillion in 15 minutes. Yeah, there's that. Right here. This is also not true. This is Trump talking about the Great Depression wouldn't have happened if indeed they had tariffs. Again, there were tariffs during the Great Depression. Trump doesn't know what he is talking about.
Would have never happened if they had stayed with the tariff policy. It would have been a much different story. They tried to bring back tariffs to save our country, but it was gone. It was gone. It was too late. Nothing could have been done. It took years and years to get out of that depression.
This is an astonishing level of incompetence. An astonishing level of incompetence. Nobody needed to do this. This wasn't necessary. Now, an argument can be made, just to err on Trump's argument for the moment. The US was losing its position globally. Countries like China, other countries where manufacturing could be done, had started to, let's say, eat into the capability of America's economic domain and economic capabilities. And Trump wants to reshape the global order by forcing these countries to come to the table to make some kind of deal that is in the best interest of America. Meaning the tariffs are a way of trying to force countries to negotiate with us, where we get better terms in those negotiations and try to rebalance the trade distribution. So the problem with this is that despite the extreme level of tariffs that they're putting on, let's say, a country like China, the amount of trade that the US does with China is only 2% of China's GDP. Put that in context. That means, worst come to worst, China can find a new market. And many of these other countries, China has said, hey, if America wants to act this way, we're open for business. You can come to us. Meaning what Trump may get is not a reshoring of jobs in America. He may get countries just choosing to go elsewhere, as opposed to making deals and trades with America. This may hasten the issue of BRICS, not diminish or slow it down. I want to get to the calculation, though. The calculation is fascinating to me. So this is Rand Paul, the people on Capitol Hill. They're not happy with what Trump is doing, especially in the Senate. The Republicans in the House of Representatives, they are lemmings for Donald Trump, so they don't necessarily care as much. But this is Rand Paul taking an axe to the argument that Trump is making here.
What's the rationale for getting behind this? Well, one, we should not live under emergency rule. The Constitution said taxes are raised by Congress. Most specifically, taxes originate in the House and come to the Senate. So I'm against emergency rule. But on the tariffs in particular, on the idea of trade, trade is proportional to wealth. The last 70 years of international trade has been an exponential curve upwards, and the last 70 years of prosperity has been upwards also. We are richer because of trade with Canada, and so is Canada. Whenever you trade with somebody, when an individual buys somebody else's product, it's mutually beneficial or you wouldn't buy it. If the trade is voluntary, it's always beneficial. There is no Canada versus the U.S. The consumer wins when the price is the lowest price. Tariffs raise prices and they're a bad idea for the economy.
But what if this is, what's the rationale for
Yes. One last point before I get to my guess. Decimates political parties in elections. So this was one of the other interesting points that somebody raised. I need to find the video. But they point out that when this has been done in the past, those political parties have taken a hit politically because the public effectively blamed them for the increase in prices that they themselves have to pay. As I don't know who said, I think it was Bill Clinton, it's the economy, stupid. And if you're going to do things to effectively damage your constituents and the people that voted for you, keep in mind, the majority of workers in this country voted for Trump. And Trump has taken one action after the next to damage those workers, whether it was firing them from their jobs to the tune of like 100,000, whether it was destroying Social Security, Medicare services that they themselves would rely upon, or in this case, whether it's putting a massive tax on them that they themselves at the bottom will have to pay, while he gives his cronies a massive tax cut. People like himself, people like Elon Musk, have a hard time believing that that is going to go over well in the midterms. We'll see. I'm joined by my guest, though. I want to bring him in. We are joined with the man himself, Arnaud Develay. He is an author, political analyst, and international lawyer specializing in international criminal law. His book, Foreign Entanglements, Biden, Ukraine, and the Fracturing of the American Political Consensus. Arnaud, man, welcome to the show. How you doing? You doing okay?
Hello, Jamal. I'm fine, thank you.
Thank you for joining me, man. I really appreciate it. I am confused on something. And so I've been asking people when they come on the show in order to get their take and to try to maybe help me orient myself. Trump has initiated a new mineral deal. Now, putting in quotes because it's not mineral deal. It's basically all of the industries in Ukraine, right? Oil, gas, rare earths, pretty much anything, with the idea that Ukraine has paid the United States $300 billion back with a 4% interest. And we get controlling factor in all of it up until the point where it's paid back. That is astonishing. Now, Zelensky has balked at this, has ran to Europe. Europe has patted him on the head, said, it's okay, it's okay. We're working on something. We're going to work with you on this. Trump knows, at least I would hope he knows, that Zelensky can't sign that deal, that deal wouldn't even be approved if it went through the RADA. And yet, that deal is out there. Trump has doubled down on that, saying, hey, Zelensky is out here running around saying that he's balking against the deal and he wants NATO membership for it. He knows he's not going to get NATO membership for it. And in fact, it's like, look, you better sign the deal or else bad things are going to happen. What is going on here? Certainly he knows that Zelensky can't sign that deal. Or does he believe that the Ukrainian military is going to get so weak that Zelensky is going to be forced, bent, into shape to sign that deal? I don't know which one it is, because I know I'm running long. If indeed it is true that Trump wrote that deal with the idea that Zelensky couldn't sign it, what does that mean?
Well, that's a good question.
Thank you. I appreciate that.
It could also be a situation, my take on it, I mean, starting knowing Trump and how he kind of paints people into a corner where he anticipates that they might not be able to say either yes or no, depending on the context. And this allows him afterward to turn around to his domestic constituency and say, see, we can't do business with this person. We have to somehow find someone, like Biden was fond of saying, with who's rock solid. When he was talking about the prosecutor general Shokin, about that $1 billion loan guarantee. That's kind of the way I look at it. Because right now, obviously, Trump's range is limited. It's limited in time, in as far as the campaign promise that he made when he ran on putting an end to the war in Ukraine, and in as far as all those other files that we can imagine he wishes to handle before his term is over. And right now, what does he have to show for himself as far as foreign policy is concerned? Zilch, nothing. And in the Ukraine situation, you got to put the optics. You can't just do a 180 overnight. People would not understand this. So he understands first that he has to somewhat set the stage so that at some point he understands the guy is unreliable. That much he has internalized, I would assume. He understands that this guy is even more so unreliable that the Europeans are, going in the opposite direction and encouraging him to violate any kind of a ceasefire of, that he, Trump, that is, somewhat discusses, even if it's orally at this point with the Russians. The guy, the Zelensky, within 24 hours violates it. So he makes Trump's look bad. So I think it's all part of, this setting the stage, showing the guy is a lunatic. He's disrespecting us. He's not listening. He does not. He basically spits on the hand that feeds him, i.e. the U.S.
Yeah.
And when we try to somehow put something forward, which is par for the course in as far as how much we've invested in this stupid project, let's call it what it is. The guy pretends to have conditions attached to his signature. But all this is, I think, a political theater, and that sets the stage at some point to more radical action. What are those radical action is going to be? I don't know.
Yeah.
But at this point, this is part of this. You have PR firms whose job it is to clean you up. When this is what happened in Ukraine, for instance. My book talks about it with the owner of Burisma, right? So he gave a call to this friend of his, the former president of Poland, who had very good connections in the Western establishment, and said, I've got a problem here. My assets are frozen in the UK. I'm on the shit list. I can't travel. Those guys in Kiev now that have been put in place by Nuland and co are gunning for me. I need you to somehow set me up, put me in touch with, the crowd that, can do something for me. And among other things, I'm willing to pay this firm. It's called Porter and something in the UK, and they're specialized in. They can make a dictator, look like Snow White.
Yeah.
So, although Snow White, I'm wielding this with caution because the new Snow White, is actually not doing very well at the box office.
When they wouldn't even have little dwarfs. It's like, are you serious? Like, are you serious?
You get my point, right?
Yeah.
So, but that's in this particular situation, that's the other way around. We're trying to turn the Churchill of the 21st century into someone who's really, a biatch that needs to be slapped down once and for all, because for whatever reason he's been told a lot of things, and that ingratiates him to his own reflection in the mirror, and the guy has drank too much of his own Kool-Aid, and he's completely there's no way to get him to in a rational manner somehow take into account that there's a new administration that does not want to be remaining in this Ukraine thing any longer. But so that's my take on it. That's what I would say is going on right now. But I could be wrong. Who knows? With Trump, it's difficult to somehow read between the lines. But first things first. And this guy obviously is toxic. He's radioactive. He gets on everybody's nerves.
Yes, he does.
He does. That's So what do? You need new players. You need new partners to somehow Not to mention, the Russians have been clear on their side of things. The guy is illegitimate. So whatever agreement you enter into with this guy signing it has no legal value whatsoever. So the consensus is clear from day one. First order of business is you got to get rid of him, but you can't just kind of like step in and just take him out. Although, what prevents from doing so? They've done it. There are people who can do that.
Right, so you can give $20 that would do that.
But
the other thing has to do with ceasefire. Now, the U.S. and Russia apparently entered into talks with the idea of reinitiating the Black Sea Initiative. This requires Europe, which is super interesting to me. And I'm wondering whether or not the U.S. and Russia are trying to do an end run around Europe for that deal. The other catch for this is the ceasefire is being violated almost immediately, almost as if an FU to Trump for even initiating the ceasefire in the first place. Russia has apparently pointed this out, saying, hey, here are all the violations to the ceasefire agreement. The United States doesn't seem to be doing anything about the fact that Kiev is violating the ceasefire agreement. Russia is sticking with it, though, apparently. At the very least, they've said they're sticking with it, despite the fact that Kiev is violating that deal. I'm not going to ask why. I understand why they're sticking with it. They want to show, hey, we've been consistent. These people are lunatics. I guess it's the thought from Russia's side. They don't really want to deal anyway. And all things being equal, what they want is to proceed with the war. And one of the ways they could do that is by showing, well, Kiev is not a viable partner. They're not somebody we can work with. They're violating all of these deals every time we have them in the first place, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. What is your thought on this?
Well, the Russians are going to, by default, stick to the twin objectives of the special military operation, because that's one thing for sure, that they have complete control over as a process. Now, this being said, Putin and his people are rational actors, and if you can limit, the loss of life, you're going to explore every possible alternative to the conflict. To the extent, after years of literally no contact whatsoever with Washington on a diplomatic level, tit for tat, and I kick out your diplomats, and I do the same. This is almost like an unexpected, and yes, it is. So you have to look at the big picture. You have to zoom out and look at it, because again, those are some of the, not some would say there are three of them, but two of the three superpowers in the current world order. So you've got to act responsibly, and you can't just condition your bilateral relationship on one particular file, i.e. the Ukraine file.
I see.
This being said, the Russians are moreover extremely legalist. They almost to a fault. I mean, they are very conservative in how they approach any kind of issue, whatever issue that might be. I mean, I'll take the example of the JCPOA, for instance. The reason why the Iranians have not overreacted, for instance, and God knows provocations have been coming galore since 2018 and the unilateral withdrawal of the US. Provocations, obviously the partial stance adopted by the IAEA is completely, pro-Western. The maximum pressure doctrine. So the Iranians have remained cautious. They've remained within the confine of the JCPOA, even when they resumed uranium enrichment per paragraph 26 and 36 of the deal, out of respect of the Russians basically having their back. Not just the Russians, the Chinese too, but the Russians having their back. And so they have to, this idea that you don't want, if you start abandoning international standards, international agreement, and departing from good faith engagement with our Western partners, then you're not better than them. And the perception then in the rest of the world, which is kind of like the bride at the wedding that those two are vying for, better than this maverick and this rogue guy called the US. So somebody has to act as an adult, is what I'm saying. And this is why, in that sense, great power, they are great powers, and as such, whether or not they abide or not abide to agreement sets a precedent for then everybody else to say, well, if those guys who have such influence don't even respect international law, whether it's a treaty or a customary international law usage, custom, there's no incentive for anybody else to do so. And don't forget, those countries are the founding members of the UN Charter.
Right.
So if it has to count for anything,
I guess my thing is, if they can't abide by this, then how could you ever get a deal? And there are 2 points, right? If Ukraine can't abide by it, in one sense, and two, if the United States is not going to do anything to kind of push them to abide by it, then how could you ever get a deal with the United States on the issue of Ukraine?
Well, you might not get a deal. To make it, long story short, you might not get a deal. That's the whole point. At the same time, you have to be ready for any contingency, but you at least have to provide the US the opportunity to come out and denounce its own proxies' lack of, willingness to play ball, so that at least it's on the record. So like I said, there might be a domestic component to it. I would assume there is. But it also has to be on the record on the international level, because how can you take the U.S. Leadership statements towards getting an agreement to put an end to the conflict if bearing on something as trivial as a ceasefire or the resumption of a grain deal in the Black Sea and the repeated violation thereof, you're not even hearing the sponsor say anything or denounce it or go on the record and say enough is enough. So that's the reason why Russia is they're standing pat. They're giving Trump some room, the Trump administration some room. Keep in mind that the fundamental, the what's called the root cause, basically, is a term we've heard a lot lately. The Russians have not heard any proposal of any kind bearing on addressing the root cause. So that's the first thing. Second of all, there would be a very easy way to show goodwill in putting an end to the conflict. It would be to basically turn off the spigot, money-wise, weapon-wise, and intelligence-wise. We haven't seen that. So this being in the background, this is also what probably compelled Moscow a couple of days ago to come out in the open and say, hey, what about that ceasefire? I mean, we're trying to abide by it, but it doesn't seem as if you have any leverage on this guy here. So they're trying to go the U.S. in showing more assertiveness in reining in Zelensky. But the problem is Zelensky has the Europeans whispering in his ears, telling him, we got your back, no matter what happens. This grain deal are never going to happen because it would require the lifting of sanctions on the bank, the Russian bank. Yeah, and we're not going to do this. So the other guy, he's like a hoodlum who feels encouraged to keep on acting up the way he's been acting, and it's true to form, and that's what he knows best. And honestly, he has no incentive fundamentally himself to be part of a process that would see an end to the conflict. So it's a really, really messy situation, to be sure.
No, I agree with you. He should turn off the spigot. I mean, if Zelensky is going rogue in this way, turn off the spigot. And speaking of that, I want to show you this. I want to get your take on this. So this is Rubio is in Europe, and he is speaking with NATO members. And of course, you can imagine he's going to get an earful on the issue of NATO. He's going to get an issue on Greenland. This is what Rubio has to say.
Invest more in national security. But the events of the last few years, a full-scale ground war in the heart of Europe, is a reminder that hard power is still necessary as a deterrent. And so we do want to leave here with an understanding that we are on a pathway, a realistic pathway, to every single one of the members committing and fulfilling a promise to reach up to 5% of spending. That includes the United States will have to increase its percentage, because if the threats truly are as dire as I believe they are, and the members of this alliance believe they are, then that threat has to be confronted by a full and real commitment to have the capability to confront.
Can Europe even do that? He's effectively saying, I want you to get 5%, even though you barely even gave 2% of your GDPs. That seems to be unfathomable from Europe.
Well, it's a kind of a Mexican standoff situation here. It's a tit for tat. I mean, he's trying to tell the Europeans, okay, you want to keep doing this. You guys want to keep being a pain, as far as this Ukraine deal is concerned. Fine, but you got to step up. You got to increase your participation to this construct called NATO, to the extent you still feel NATO being an indispensable organization, against because let's put it this way, it's a ghost threat. I mean, J.D. Vance said that much in Munich, right? Mm-hmm. There's no existential threat but yourself. But Rubio is in his role. I mean, he has to malax them, and he has to borrow some of their own terminology and trying to basically face their own contradiction. To the extent he knows, he has the figures, I would assume he does. And as you pointed out, they are not in a position to increase what he's asking for, what the Trump administration is asking for this to remain a viable path. The idea is, they're again providing the premise whereupon, to the extent they're not getting satisfaction down the road, they're going to say, hey, you guys want to be players, but you're not coming to the playground with any kind of skills.
Yeah.
And so you're on your own. We're sorry, but why should we provide security for you?
So wait, you think he's effectively saying we need 5% because he wants to effectively pull out in some way? Basically, look, you guys say you're under threat. You guys are terrified. You're saying that the Russians are trying to take over all of Europe. Fair enough. 5%, if that's what you really believe. I mean, now, to be fair, Rubio is a neocon. So Rubio may believe this on some level.
Well, I mean,
JTMS,
neocons are ideologues, but to the extent it's expedient for them to, borrow a page from Trump's book as far as having other people pay, they'll go along with that. It's fine. A neocon just wants a war anywhere he can find one. It doesn't really matter whether it's in Europe or in the Pacific or in the Middle East. I think Rubio is more obsessed with West Asia than Europe, as a matter of fact.
Yeah,
like any neocon would. I mean, we harken back to what those neocons used to say 20 years ago. Boys go to Baghdad and real men go to Tehran. So, that's okay with him.
Let's go to Tehran for a bit. I am fascinated by this threat that Donald Trump has effectively launched at Israel. I'm sorry, at Tehran. Now, Iran has a security agreement with Russia. I would imagine that security agreement will undoubtedly back them up, if not necessarily militarily, with hardware, with equipment, those type of things, if indeed they were struck. But that is utter chaos. Like the chaos that would erupt if indeed the United States ended up some kind of bombing run on Tehran would be outrageous. Moscow itself has come out effectively warning this is a horrible idea. Don't do this. And even with the idea that they are willing to negotiate behind the scenes on behalf of Tehran, what would that negotiation be? I mean, the reality of it is Iran can't negotiate under threat. And so the very fact of putting a threat out and then saying you want to negotiate seems outlandish, especially considering Donald Trump was the one that killed the first JCPOA that was working, by the way. And as you pointed out, Iran stuck with it a year after Trump killed it. So, for one, do you think Trump is bluffing? I guess that's the first question.
I think he's trying to find his marker in this particular, like in any geopolitical file. He's not obviously someone who's versed into foreign policy. Those are complicated processes for him. He does not take into account the cultural, religious, even the local marker. In order to make an analysis, you have to compute all those factors.
Right.
And you have to listen to what people say and try to read between the lines of what they mean and how does that compute in the way that culture, this particular culture, means certain things. He's this kind of guy is like a bull in a china shop. He comes in and he thinks by just setting the bar very high, he'll be able to coax people into somehow make him look good. But one has to understand that this JCPOA, the reason why Trump rejected it is because the U.S. at the Israelis' behest always wanted to enlarge the deal. There was an article actually written in the or produced as a white paper by one of those think tank in DC back in 2009. I think it was the Center for Near East Policy. Was written by a guy who's admittedly a hardcore Zionist. And this idea of entering into negotiations with the Iranians bearing on their nuclear, mind you, they've declared their civil nuclear activity, and they've signed on the non-proliferation regime treaty.
Right.
So the Iranians from day one, they were respecting international law, by joining the NPT. You allow automatically inspections. So they were perfectly in accordance with their obligations. It's just that they needed to have a sanction relief, so they entered into this protracted negotiation process, hoping to get some sanction relief. And the problem is that if you look at this white paper, that white paper said basically that the JCPOA, as it ended up being called, was never meant to be respected by the US. The idea was to, at some point, find fault with it and blame the Iranian for lack of cooperation, with the idea that the only way we could somehow allow Iran to think that we would lift any kind of sanctions is if they integrated into the negotiation 2 additional chapters. One bearing on their ballistics capabilities, and the second one bearing on the alleged influence carried out by Iran in the region, in as far as the some call it militias. Yeah, exactly. So this idea that we were only going to limit ourselves to inspecting or having some kind of transparent civil nuclear program was always misdirected from the get-go. The Israelis, they basically want Iran to basically surrender all the means of self-defense, bearing on its own political independence, national, and basically abandon support for the Palestinian cause. That's never going to happen.
This is nonsense. Yeah, that's never going to happen.
No. So at this point, we find ourselves, and that comes back to your original question: is he bluffing? Well, he has to basically play along with the Israeli playbook, but he's going to find himself soon faced with, again, reality. Reality is that you would, and I heard someone on your show come up to such conclusion, which is basically you're going to blow up your own term, your own presidency. Everything that you ran upon will be blown to smithereens, and it will be indeed worse than what happened with George Bush Jr. I mean, George Bush Jr., next to such a blunder by the Trump administration, would pass for like a frolic. So,
and by the way, they're using a similar argument, like where George Bush was like, "Well, we think they have nuclear weapons." Scott Ritter was one of the inspectors that went there for the nuclear inspection. Ritter at some point realized that he wasn't there to inspect; he was there to effectively start a war. And they're doing something similar. Well, Iran may get nukes. Now, Tulsi Gabbard has come out saying Iran is not trying to get nukes. There's been a fatwa against nuclear weapons by the Ayatollah, and yet they're still coming up with this argument. Oh, they may get nukes, they may get nukes. All the while, Israel has nukes.
Yes, I know. Well, they're alluding to the fact that if Iran understood what's good for it, it would start producing nuke in earnest, because we know what happens to countries who do not have such capabilities. They get invaded. First, they get sanctioned for years on end until they're weak enough and you can buy your way within the regime, orchestrate a coup on the inside, or weaken the institutions to such an extent that after a 1 month bombing campaign, you modify their defense, air defense, and then you can come in with the ground troops. So this is the same playbook, but this time around, and we come back to what you were saying in your initial presentation, is we have a strategic agreement with the Russians.
Yes.
And the Russians, to the extent Iran does not initiate anything, but only acts as per Article 51 of the UN Charter, Russia has an obligation to come to Iran's assistance. So this is changing the whole configuration here. So this jeopardizes, even any kind of attempt or pretense to put an end to the situation in Ukraine, and or even developing bilateral relation with Russia, with everything that this implies as far as real mineral deals. And God knows Russia has plenty of them, which the US needs. So I think it's all about posturing in the end. I think it's not going to amount to much. But the idea, again, is to say Trump has to somehow be able to turn to his Israeli donor class and say, hey, short of, shooting myself in the head here, which is irrational, you will at least agree on that, right?
Yeah.
I have to be there so I can fight for you another day, right? Otherwise, what's the point? No, it's a zero-sum game. Nobody's going to win here because X, Y, and Z, U.S. bases in the Persian Gulf, the Strait of Hormuz, and even you guys will be, rained upon in terms of missiles, including on the Dimona power plant. And so then, if there's a radiation fallout, the latter is not going to care whether it's a Palestinian or an Israeli. It's good night Gracie for everyone.
Well,
so even in Tel Aviv, they ought to be able to show to be sensible to such arguments.
You think so?
Now Russia is, well, yeah. I mean, I know we're dealing with a death cult, especially under the current iteration. I know those Kahani, crazies in Netanyahu's cabinet, but I'm assuming they still have, the instinct of self-preservation, to the extent they have this. They want to build this new temple in place in lieu of the Al-Aqsa mosque and push for this Greater Israel project. How is that going to be advanced? Fundamentally, if your home base is completely obliterated, it makes no sense. Yeah. So there's only that much you can do. But God knows, I mean, the Israelis, they are known to be very pushy. I mean, you kick them out of the window, they come back by the chimney. No pun intended. So they'll try. They'll try everything they can. So yeah, but at the end of the day, again, it is what it is, and it is not feasible.
I hope.
Yes, it's not gonna happen. But Trump, again, not unlike with Zelensky, Trump needs to be able to say, hey, I've done everything I could. I mean, look, I'm working. I'm pushing the agenda as you recommended. I'm addressing the issue, but I'm faced with hardcore data here, and if we do the calculus, whichever way we look at it from that point on, no one wins.
I hope you're right.
So we have to sit down, get the Russians involved. So the Russians, they talk to everybody in the region. Mm-hmm. That's their strength. Because they have like 1/5 of the Israeli population is of Russian extraction. So yes, 1/5. Wow. 20% of Israelis are Russian Jews. So
interesting.
And historically, Russia, I mean, they have to. I mean, they were the one who liberated the camps, right? So,
right.
So, at some point, Trump can make the argument, say, we can get the Russians involved to keep, the Iranian threat under control. Push comes to shove. Mm-hmm. I have guarantees. The guy. He's trustworthy. When he gives his word on something, he keeps it, right?
Yeah.
So that's how this whole thing is going to go down. But we have to go through the Trump boastful, approach. That's what he does. He's, that's his shtick.
And to be fair, Iran did say they were willing to negotiate back channel. So I get the sense that they're open to these negotiations. I don't get the sense that they would stop funding Hezbollah or give up their own missile program. I think that's outrageous.
That's a non-starter.
Yeah, that's a non-starter. If that's where they're trying to start from, that's a non-starter. No country is going to, unilaterally give away its ability to defend itself. That's the entire point of a country, to be able to defend itself. The beating heart of the country is the military. So no, that's a non-starter. I want to go to Le Pen. You brought this up to me when you was like, "Hey, are we going to hit Le Pen?" Yes. I'm amazed at the turn Europe has taken. Whether it's Romania and Kouakou, whether it's Le Pen, this is rather astonishing that these courts are finding ways to keep leading candidates that are skeptical of the war off the ballot. Like Kouakou, his thing was like, "Look, I don't want a military base in Romania. Why do I want to get involved in some kind of war? This is this nonsense." He wins the first round, goes into the second round. He's winning the second round. The court kills the election immediately, just stops it, and said that the Russians were using TikTok ads to overwhelm the voter base with disinformation. Now, this ended up being nonsense. It was nonsense on its face. Same thing with Le Pen. Apparently, they're saying that she embezzled money or apparently used campaign funds inappropriately. I would wager to you, if they look very hard at the other candidates, they would find something similar. But of course, I think it's selective. I could be wrong. Maybe she did do it. I don't know. But the remedy that they've come up with is keep her off the ballot for 2027. That is amazing, considering she most likely would have won, and she would have most likely been very skeptical of this war and continued money to this war. Meaning Macron is trying to put troops, as he calls it. I don't think he's going to do it, but whatever. Him in the UK talked about putting troops in Ukraine. She's not on that page. Give me your thoughts on this. You brought it up, so I'm super curious on your thinking.
Yes. Well, I guess the issue is about this l'exécution provisoire. So, the ineligibility aspect is effective, even though she still has the option to appeal the decision. That's in and of itself something that's unprecedented in French political life. And as it were, it translates essentially in the judiciary branch stepping in and deciding that for 11 million French voters who voted for her last election, there won't be a Marine Le Pen on the ballot.
Right.
So this poses a very unprecedented situation. But to be honest, if we look at the facts of the case, she was warned repeatedly, and she had reason to know that down the road they would try to use every trick in the book. Because the misconception of the European parliamentary members of the National Rally was that if it's not explicitly prohibited by the rules at the European Parliament, because there is no law that states explicitly that you cannot do what they've done.
Right.
There's just a somewhat vaguely worded sets of rules, you would say bylaws at the European Parliament. And yes, every party is doing it. And obviously one of the arguments made by the defense was that we are elected on a list at the national level, and we are representing a party, and we are representing people who feel like we should try to change the European Union from within. So you cannot blame us by saying that we are using, those funds to undermine the European Union. Otherwise, there cannot be any kind of talks about democratic discourse here. Because essentially, if we don't use those funds to promote the European Union and further integration and everything that defines characterizes the European Union, then basically we have no rights whatsoever. And I guess the defense basically that was a good argument, but indeed it is what it is. The misconception is to try to understand that the European Union is actually a forum where all kind of diverse ideas can be exchanged. It's not. It's a project, and that's heading toward withdrawing sovereignty to EU member states and turning their national leadership as mere figurehead. So to the extent you're going against the grain as far as the ultimate agenda is concerned, obviously, yes, you're going to become a target, and this is what happened. Now, a lot of people have been drawing a parallel with another party, which is the party of the current prime minister in France, François Bayrou, who was kind of doing the same thing, albeit to in less in smaller quantities. But I mean, to me, a crime is a crime. If it's a violation, whether it's about 7 million euros or 200,000 euros in Bayrou's case, it doesn't really matter, right? But Bayrou is party is the one that allowed Macron to get a majority in the National Assembly, or at least who voted with the Macron's party to adopt some of the most controversial legislation. So we can see that ultimately it really comes down to window dressing as far as how do you get rid of people who are not on the page. Once upon a time, not that long ago, you would basically take them out, round them up at night with the knock on the door at 6 in the morning or whatever, and disappear them. Well,
Right.
today, dictatorship are a little bit more savvy and sophisticated, and they try to somehow, use the institutions at their disposal and window dress the whole thing. But essentially, the result is the same. Is that you are disenfranchising, millions upon millions of voters. But we're dealing with a system that has its back against the wall right now. I mean, the
Mhm.
economics are terrible. This whole shenanigan bearing on the existential threat posed by Russia is only but a veneer allowing for the biggest heist to date of people's savings, right? So they're gunning for it. It's the Hail Mary. They're really that close to accomplishing their goal, which is to create a supranational state, and they're not going to allow any kind of democratic niceties to get into the way of things. Whether it's about preserving the eastern flank of NATO in Romania, or taking the chance of having one of Europe's pillar, i.e., France, being taken over by a party that is anywhere but where we want to be.
They would have to do the same thing with the AfD in Germany,
Well,
because at some point,
they
yeah,
would have had the AfD won outright the election, but to the extent they came in second, uh, the AfD was essentially ostracized, as the National Rally has been ostracized in France. It's the
right.
same method. It's called in France they call it le Front Républicain. It goes back to 1986. So
Mhm.
the AfD is subjected to the German version of the Front Républicain. That's it. We don't want any populist party to participate in any way, shape, or form in the running of any countries in Europe, especially Germany and or France, which again are two of the big heavyweights.
I, I get the sense they can't keep that up. There's no way they can keep that up. I mean, the numbers for Le Pen's party, it's National Front or National Rally. It's one of those, National Rally, I believe. And AfD are increasing, and they've been increasing one election after the next, after the next. And at some point, that behavior becomes very overt that you're going to have to take. Like, it's going to be very provocative. And the way that they took Le Pen off is very provocative. I get the sense it's going to piss people off. It's not going to be, oh, they took her off the ballot. Oh, well. I get the sense it's going to be, how dare they undercut our capability of voting in this way by taking this kind of um, this provocative act to remove a candidate from the ballot. I mean, or do you think I'm wrong on that? I mean, like the Carla Gogetsku thing, for example, has had massive protests in response to it. And I get the sense that Le Pen is going to create a similar effect.
Yeah, well, two things here. One would have to compare the political culture both in Romania and France. In Romania, you have more of a homogeneous population which understands where its interests are, and so they
Mhm.
might be more likely to organize and engage in forceful protest at the very least. Would that be a success? I don't know. To the extent Brussels has prerogative, they can deploy what are de facto European troops now. There's a mechanism called Eurogender 4, which is composed of several member state gendarmerie, police forces, military police, I guess, gendarmerie
What?
is. Yes, so they can do what the Soviet Union of old used to do when there was a problem in one of the republics. They would send Soviet, I guess, yeah, from the center. The center would send like special forces to quelch the revolt or the uprising.
Yeah.
So ultimately, that's what I would see happen if the situation somewhat gets out of control in Romania. As far as France is concerned, I think after the Yellow Vest movement, a lot of people have been somehow coaxed into, not making any waves. I don't
Mhm.
see the French people really reacting in that sense, more than just complaining about it. I mean, I just don't see it. I don't think the French people of today is the French people of 100 years ago. To begin with.
That's unfortunate. That is unfortunate.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of people are just into their consumerism, their hedonism, and the French substrate is fractured right now. I mean, what's the French people as such? I mean, I would say there's at least 3 different segments of the constituting population of France. And all of them are diverging. It's 30%. It's reflected in the makeup of the parliament. You have 3 different factions, and so this is not, to me, something that shows any kind of revolt. I doubt it. It's not going to happen.
That's unfortunate.
And like you said, if there was to be a revolt, then the system would use, because this is how they do it. They create a situation which anybody normally constituted would revolt against, and then they deem this act of revolt as an act of sedition, which legalizes and justifies a major crackdown, which I guess would take the shape of what I just described. If in Romania things get out of control, Brussels will also send Eurogender 4 to crack down on the protest.
By the way,
why? Because the French police would not do it themselves. This is, those are their sons, daughters. So you have to send people from Eastern Europe to do it. They don't care. That's also why they want Ukraine probably into the European Union, because if you need to send thugs to crack down on national aspiration, you can send Ukrainians. They'll do it, no problem.
Yeah.
Yes.
Before I let you go, I have to get into the tariffs. So apparently Russia was not on the list of tariffs, which raised eyebrows for people. Why do you think he's doing this? I mean, there is no war, in the sense that the U.S. Trump didn't have to do it. He didn't campaign on this. This is kind of out of the blue, where he's like, yeah, tariffs are the weapon now that I'm going to use to reshape the global economy. One, do you think he's going to get what he wants out of this, which is this kind of reshuffling of the global economy where it's in America's best interest? And 2, well, I guess the first question is, why do you think he's doing it? And 2, do you think he's going to be successful in whatever he's trying to accomplish with these tariffs?
Well, again, here I would have 2 remarks. The first one is that policy predicated on imposing tariff is not fundamentally a flawed policy. The problem is you need time for the substantial, the structural result that you wish to accomplish to take place, and he doesn't have time. I mean, the midterms are going to be in less than 2 years.
Yes.
So that's wholly insufficient to restructure your industrial base, because that's what he wants. He wants basically manufacturing to come back in the US. But you're talking about a 30-year outsourcing of the industrial base. It happened in increments, slowly but surely. So that's not going to do it in 2 years' time. This is not going to be sufficient. The second thing, in terms of his political communication, is that, well, Trump has to occupy the space. So, if he feels that, news are not too good on the geopolitical front, foreign policy wise, he has to basically occupy the space. Sarkozy was known to do that in France. We called it the hyper president. Too much communication, too much in your face. He does this, he does that. Sometimes the best way to do it is to be quiet. Don't be so omnipotent in the media. Why? Yeah. Because you're the president. You are the arbiter. You are the ultimate authority. You're the voice of reason. And so if you cheapen your voice by constantly having an opinion on every single thing, and we see you every day on TV talking about anything from the weather to who's going to win the World Series, But that again, that's Trump's style, and
Yeah.
we live in an age of media, and he has to occupy the media stage any way, shape, or form, and so it is what it is.
But these are going to hit workers more than anybody else. Meaning, I think Trump would even acknowledge that in the short term, it's going to hurt. But he is talking about effectively, we're going to do this, and then we're going to give a tax cut, which is going to go to the richest. So the poorest in the country are going to become poor because they're going to be paying more across the board. And the richer are going to get richer because Trump is going to give them a massive tax cut from whatever they make on these tariffs.
I agree.
Just
It
amazing.
makes no sense on its face. I mean, what you should do is invest heavily, create a fund, if anything, into R&D and try to create entire new industries. That's what you should be doing. And form people, train them on those new jobs, those high-paying jobs. I mean, this is. But again, you look at Russia today, it enjoys a measure of success, and all the indicators, economic indicators, are in the green. But why? Because it's a 25-year economic policy that has been implemented in stages, starting in the 2000s with trying to promote and develop an economy based on the sale of oil and gas, and try to reinvest then all those dividends into developing the infrastructure, allowing people to live better, invest in the middle class, try to build your middle class. I mean, it's not rocket science. JFK said it best. We need a robust middle class. What makes a strong economy? When everybody, in the middle. I mean, you're always going to have poor people, right, and very rich people. But if you have a very bulgy middle, people who are doing well, and they're buying houses, they're they're consuming, but this can only be predicated on jobs. You need to create jobs, and I'm not talking about bullshit jobs where you need to juggle 2 or 3 of them just to merely make ends meet. I'm talking about real jobs, but those real jobs can only be created if you create the new industries.
Agreed.
And those new industries, they require R&D. So there's no magic wand, in other words, otherwise, I mean, we're dealing with snake oil salesmen.
I think that's what we're dealing with. A snake oil salesman.
Yeah.
I think he's going to damage the people who effectively voted for him. Arnaud, man, thank you for this. Arnaud Develay. We covered a lot. Arnaud Develay is an author, political analyst, and international lawyer specializing in international criminal law. His latest books is Foreign Entanglements, Biden, Ukraine, and the Fracturing of America Political Consensus. Arnaud, is there anywhere else people can find you, by the way?
Well, they can join me on my page on 21st Century Wire. I publish there. Otherwise, they can join me on my Telegram channel, Invictus Lex.
Very cool. Man, thank you for this. I always appreciate these conversations. Thank you. You have a good one.
Thank you.
Be safe. All right. Arnaud, shout out to him. And he is right. Like, it's almost as if Donald Trump decided that he waves a magic wand. And in waving the magic wand, he is somehow going to bring industries back to the United States, missing the fact that the entire policy of America in Democratic and Republican administrations was globalization, meaning that is what they wanted to do. That is what they were pushing for the last 50 years. And so he believes that in one fair swoop, he's going to be able to pull us off. I'm going to make a prediction that he is going to get wiped out in the midterms, that the public is going to blame Trump and the Republican Party broadly for these tariffs and the effect that these tariffs have on everyday Americans. Speaking of that, I am joined with my man, Garland Nixon. There he is, the man himself, the man of the hour. Garland Nixon, he is a political analyst. He is also has his own show on YouTube on the Garland Nixon channel. Check him out. He has interviews all the time. He is fantastic. Everything that comes out of his mouth is awesome. How you doing, Garland? You doing okay today?
I'm doing great. I was just listening to your last guest. It was great. Excellent interview. That guy's really good.
Arnaud is good. Arnaud is good.
Yeah.
I want to get to something. Well, we got to hit the tariffs. Donald Trump is, the pretty much tariffing the world. It is literally Trump versus the world on these tariffs. And I was looking for the numbers. Where are the numbers? Because it's an entire list. I mean, every country would effectively have a tariff against the country. They vary in different amounts. So let's say China has like 34%. Then you get to Canada. Then you get right here. Chile, 10%, India, 26%, Israel, 17%. What's funny about Israel removed its tariffs, believing that Trump wouldn't hit them with a tariff. Trump hit them anyway. China, 34%, Japan, 24%, Turkey, 10%, Taiwan, 32%. And it goes all the way down the list. Pretty much every country is getting hit with a tariff. And if it's not stated, then it's like 10%. Russia and Ukraine were not included on that list. This is going to be damaging. And I know that in Trump's mind, well, we're going to try to bring industry back into the United States. Good luck. Your term is going to be for another 3 years. I get the sense that companies are not going to take the expense of moving all the way back to the United States. And when somebody pointed this out, somebody was like, yeah, well, they should just buy American in reference to cars, effectively acknowledging, well, yeah, prices are going to be higher. Fox News, if I still have this clip up, started to make this argument sounding a lot like Jen Psaki. Do you remember when Jen Psaki came out after they put sanctions on Russian oil? And the Biden administration fully understood that the sanctions on Russian oil was going to hit normal, everyday Americans. It was going to increase prices. Jen Psaki comes out and says, our values are not without cost.
Putin's price hike.
Hey,
Remember
yeah,
that?
it was a price.
Putin's price hike. And people
Well,
were like,
they went to Putin's price hike after that, when they realized, okay, this sounds pretty bad that we're effectively acknowledging the fact that Americans are going to have to pay more. But the Fox News host, where's that clip? Okay, I'm going to have to find that clip. But she effectively comes out and says, hey, in times of war, we have to take the hit. Here she is. Oh, this is great. So she comes out and says this, and I want to get your take on it after the fact. Right.
Talking plain speak with them. Look, when this nation and those 401k people who are depending, those retirees, all of that, just talking plain speak with them. Look, when this nation used to go to war, people in this country would support the war effort with their materials at home and making things for weaponry and all of that. We got to 100% buy-in over this bumpy period. Just communicate.
She is acknowledging this is going to hurt, at the very least in the short term. Now, we don't know what the short term means. This is going to hurt. And so, we have to buy in. We have to act as if we're in a war. We're not in a war. Donald Trump is doing this randomly, out of the blue. Nobody asked him to do it. He made the decision to do it himself. And it is going to damage Americans as it increases prices across the board. That's an astonishing thing that Donald Trump just did. And all of those workers who voted for Trump with the idea that he was going to somehow better the economy just fell off a cliff. Trillions of dollars in minutes. Give me your thoughts.
A couple of things. Well, I would disagree with you when you said we're not at war. Yeah, we are. A class war. The war of the ruling elite against the rest of us poor saps out here that are trying to buy an egg every now and then. We'll be buying them one at a time soon. It won't be a matter of a dozen eggs. It'll be like, hey, guess what?
2 in the box. Right, 2 in the box.
Exactly. Yeah, exactly. But at any rate, what's interesting is they're really, without saying it, they're starting to admit that they work for the ruling elite, because she's like, we have to tell these people out here that are depending on 401ks, right? We who? Right? The ruling elite, those of us who are mouthpieces, like for instance, for the ruling elite, have to explain to the unwashed, the hoi polloi out here, those who, don't understand that they've got to take a little pain every now and then for our policies. Well, here's the thing about it. The people, these ruling elite and their mouthpieces, are thoroughly discredited. People ain't even watching the mainstream media anymore. So the idea that the ruling elite and or their mouthpieces like her can tell us that we should take pain because their policies, this is the implication. You guys got to take a little pain because these policies are going to help you in the long run. In other words, we have to first believe that you're executing policies that are going to help us in the long run. We don't believe that anymore.
I don't believe
So even if you tell us, well, you got to understand now we're at war. We who? You, the ruling elite, are at war against us. And we're at war. So you're going to have to take some pain because in the long run, this is going to help you. And actually, she doesn't even really come out and say that, but that's the implication. Take some pain in the long run, it'll help you. Nobody believes you. You're discredited. You keep telling us we're going to do tax cuts that are going to help you. And here's the way it always works. You got to take some pain. All right, ruling elite, are you going to take any pain? Well, no, not exactly. We're still going to have limousines. We're still going to have private jets and all that stuff like we are. They always tell us we got to take pain, whether it's about they've discredited themselves with environmentalism. Well, you have to suffer. You can't use an gas leaf blower you have. Yeah, you can't use that anymore. You have to have an electric leaf blower because that gas leaf blower, hurts the environment and stuff like that. Well, what about you? Are you going to stop using your private plane? Absolutely not. How about that 300-foot yacht you just bought? I got to have that, my private plane and all that stuff and 3 or 4 mansions, but you can't use the stinking leaf. It's always you working class people got to take more pain. And we'll imply that you're going to get something out of it. But history tells us the only thing we're going to get out of it is more pain. And this ain't going to work out well for the ruling elite.
And by the way, Trump is looking at this like, we're going to be able to give a tax cut. Now, we already know where those tax cuts go. Like that tax cut is going to go predominantly to the rich, while us, everybody else, having to take the hit for the recession. I mean, look, tariffs are a tax. This is one of the largest taxes on the American public that we've ever been hit with. And Trump doesn't want to own the fact that it's a tax. What does he think a company is going to do? Does he really think the company is going to eat a 20% tariff? Or are they going to say, okay, we're paying, and then we're putting this on the American public for them to pay 20% more for this particular product to compensate for the 20% tariff that we just put forward? So we, like you said, those eggs are going to go down to like 2 in a container. In the same way that when you buy a bag of chips, you have this huge bag, and then that chips are very little at the bottom because, they've shrunk down the amount because of issues of inflation or issues of cost. They are going to get a massive tax cut at the end of this. Trump is going to write this bill. He's going to give them a ton of money, with us being stuck paying for the increased costs across the board. It's that. Now, if he thinks that the American public is going to be okay with that, going into a midterm, I have a bridge to sell you on Mars. But I could be wrong. Maybe I'm wrong. Give me your take.
Well, here's the other part of it, and Trump may be counting on this, but let's see how it works out. The Democratic Party is his opposite. He has no opposition. There is a minority party. That's the Democratic Party, but they're not an opposition party. Right. We'll see. Look, Cory Booker spends 25 hours railing against whatever. Right. But then when you look online, everybody says the same thing. Here's a picture of Cory Booker with Yoav Gallant, the international war criminal. And so no matter what the Democrats do, they have been morally discredited by Gaza. I don't think there's any way for them to get out of that. Every time Bernie stands up, oh, we're going to do this, he's been discredited. People are like, come on, Bernie, you told us to vote for a genocidal maniac, right? So they've been so morally discredited. They're not a legitimate opposition party. They're just a minority party. And the polls say, as Trump, people get upset with Trump, the Democrats are even becoming even more of a minority party. That's what's interesting now, that you would think that their numbers would go up as Trump's numbers go down. Their numbers are still crap. Could this be the thing where people say, hell, I'm voting for some third party? We could start to see finally, maybe, I don't know, some move towards a third party. And then here's the question. And based on what Trump's doing with censorship, and the Democrats, they're all for that. Do we start to see that European style AFD shooting Fico, arresting Gorgescu, charging Le Pen. Do we start see the two parties come together in desperation to pass laws to make it harder for third parties, as if there ain't enough laws to make it hard for? So this could be, you could start to see now that the Democrats are morally discredited, now that the Republicans now with under Trump are also being morally discredited over Gaza. And add this, and the loss of hope, people saying, hey, that people are starting to say this over and over with Trump. Hey, that's not what I voted for.
Exactly.
And sadly it is. But I don't blame them. I understand they were so horrified and frightened with the Democrats that they were like, I got to try anything. This ain't working. But now he's just demonstrated he's a different variety of it. As I always like to say, now when I see somebody arguing, the Democrats are better. No, the Republicans are better. The Democrats are at fault. No, the Republicans are at fault. It's like I feel like I'm watching two people sitting there looking at a zebra arguing. No, it's a white horse with black stripes. No, it's not. It's a black horse with white stripes. It's a rhetorically irrelevant argument.
Yeah. The cup is half full. No, it's half empty.
Yeah.
No, that's a really good point. I get the sense that Trump is not, how can I say this? Trump had the potential to be something else. And he comes in, tells the Muslim community, looks them in the eye, hey, I'm going to end wars, not start wars. And I'm going to end this war in Gaza. And then you find out, okay, well, he just lied to the Muslim community. He's amoral to the truth. He doesn't really care, right? He says whatever he says to say to get from point A to point B. He will look you in the eye, shake your hand, and lie to your face flat out, with this kind of just Herculean capacity to accept this level of habitual lying. And so over and over again, he has done things that has repudiated the very things he said during the campaign trail. So if he says, I'm going to end this war, okay, he didn't end the war. He filled Israel with weapons and basically tried to ethnically cleanse Gaza and the West Bank. Now, Joe Biden was trying to do the same, but put that to the side for the moment. If Trump would have stuck with the deal, they wouldn't have had this flare up that Netanyahu is effectively massacring all of these people. Now, even on the economy, I would say many people voted for Trump with the idea that he was going to be a better steward of the economy. And lo and behold, he comes out and says, I'm going to have a trade war against the world. And yeah, in 10 years, it might be better. But, right now it's going to hurt. So just buy American. Okay, again, for the poor and the middle class, that doesn't really help. And then add to that, Elon Musk running around with a chainsaw and a cheese hat, talking about he's going to destroy and kill Social Security. I've made the argument that Elon Musk is radioactive. And I am glad that that has been shown to be true. So this is a clip from CNN where they're talking about Musk's effect in Wisconsin, where people literally came out to vote against Musk. And to do so much that they ran out of ballots because so many people came out effectively to say, we don't like, that guy's a weirdo. We want nothing to do with him. This is CNN pointing out, if Musk is anywhere near your campaign, you're going to lose.
This tells us,
right.
if you are a Republican candidate running in a swing state, you don't want Elon Musk anywhere near you. Yes, maybe you like the money, but you do not want his presence in your state. Why is that? Elon Musk, simply put, is an unpopular guy. He is political poison. Look in Wisconsin, his net favorable rating, minus 12 points, 12 points underwater. That is an even worse number when you look nationally. Look at that. It's minus 17 points. So if there's one big lesson to take away from
Musk is radioactive. And I don't understand. I've said this from day one. The day that Elon Musk started sniffing around Donald Trump's campaign, I said, that guy's albatross. He is radioactive. He is a weirdo. He talks strange. And not just, look, I know he has Asperger's or something, whatever that is. I'm just putting out, he is radioactive from campaigns. And then you send him to go out, the richest man on the planet, to attack Social Security, Medicare, Medicaid, where they're firing tens of thousands, if not 100,000 workers from all of these organizations, tens of thousands from Health and Human Services. I think it was like 40,000 people that they fired. And the face that Trump has for doing that is Elon Musk. This is what I mean, right? Like, what I don't want is for Democrats to represent nothing, to be nothing, to be empty vessels, and just stand there and point and said, hey, that's bad, but they're doing that, vote for us. Because I think the American public will slosh back and vote for them, and I don't want that.
A couple of things. What we're seeing is a an incredible continuity of politics in so many ways. Here's what I mean. And I've said this many times. 2020, the Democrats knew what everybody wanted. Oh yeah, free health, was it junior college? Oh man, we got you covered there. Oh, you need a whatever $20 minimum, $1 million minimum wage. They didn't care. Well, you got it. And they went on and on. Oh wait, Obamacare, a few problems, but we're going to give you a public option. They just ran down a list of what, say, Bernie supporters, which by that I mean 90% of the party who would align with the actual policies that Bernie put forward in 2016. Even though Bernie wouldn't, the people would, right? So they just gave a list of those. Hey, Bernie, give us a list of all your policies. Hey, everybody, here's a list of Bernie's policies. We got you covered. As soon as Biden got elected, all right, it's time for a war with Russia. Oh, hey, no time for East Palestine. We got to get more money for Kiev. Here's $740 for your home washed away, right? He lied about everything. The complete and total absolute disregard for anything the Biden team said on the campaign trail. Midterm, hey, elect us and we'll codify Roe v. Wade, whatever. They got elected. All right, back to war, right? Okay, Trump gets in. Hey, I'm the peace president. In other words, that continuity is, look, what they've learned is this. Tell people what they want to hear on the campaign trail.
Yeah.
And then when you get in, do what you're going to do. But that can only last but so long. Okay, it hurt the Democrats. By the time they got to 2024, people were on to them. We don't trust you. We don't care what you say. And the Democrats are like, we've got to change our message. It's not your message. What you are is screaming so loud, people can't hear what you say. Okay, so now Trump comes in. Continuity. He does exactly the same thing. You want to hear this? Yeah, I'm going to do this, that, whatever you want. When he gets in, off he goes on his tangent. And with Trump thinking he's some kind of an economic, whiz, right? That would be like me saying,
like 6 times. I'm sorry. Please continue.
Well, that would be like, I live near the Key Bridge and the Key Bridge collapsed. That'd be like me saying, yes, elect me as governor and I will personally design a new Key Bridge. I'm not an architect. I can't do it. But if I thought I could, right? The most dangerous person in the world is an idiot that thinks he's a genius. I'm not saying Trump is or isn't an idiot. I'm saying you're an idiot. You're effectively an idiot. If you are in a scientific or of some realm, some specialty, some genre that you have no training in, say international politics, and you think that you convince yourself that you understand international economics or politics, and you have absolutely zero training in it. Vladimir Putin has a degree in what? A PhD in economics. And he wrote like a document that said, if I got elected, became president, this is how I would rebuild the Russian economy. And he got elected. He used his document that he was trained in to rebuild the Russian economy, and it worked. What a shock, right? So my point is, we got people in there, Trump, who he really, you notice he didn't tell anybody this. He didn't care. He knew he had to lie to get in office. Now, at a time when, and here's the interesting thing, Luigi, at a time, what did we learn from the Luigi shooting? That people are furious at the ruling elite. They're furious at the institutions. They're furious at the billionaires. People are like, yeah, go ahead and shoot them. Yay, right? Okay. At that time, you bring in the richest man in the world. You want to talk about not being able to read the room. Talk about not reading the room. People are like, hey, let's string them up. And you're like, hey, let me get the rich man in the world. Come on over here. I'll put you right out front so everybody can see you. I could have told Trump, this probably ain't the time in history when you want to throw out the richest man in the world to actually start laying off working class people. It's a bad look. But Trump, it's not that Trump can't read the room. It's that it doesn't matter to the ruling elite. There ain't no room. The room he's reading ain't the room we're talking about. And it doesn't really matter. And he's got a bunch of ideologues around them who believe things that ideologues believe. But Biden had a team of ideologues who believe certain things. And he has a team of ideologues, but all of them together will refuse to accept that the United States is in free fall. So I just keep saying this. Everything they tried to do to save a declining empire only makes it collapse faster.
Yeah, it's almost, yeah, I agree with you. It's like I'll compare it to a game of chess for a bit. There are some positions that get very complicated. And it's a razor's edge position, meaning if you mess up, it's going to collapse. Like it's just like it is so on the level, right? That any mistake, even a tiny one, is going to decapitate your position. And sometimes if you're playing, you are making these more dramatic and extravagant moves just to hold, right? And I always feel like when you get into positions like that, it's like it's the worst case scenario. Everything that you do makes it worse. It's like you're taking these actions that don't necessarily. I'm trying to think of a real world correlation.
I got one.
Please go for it.
A person who falls in the water and they're drowning, they're reaching all and they're struggling, right? Here's the problem. In order to swim, I don't know if you got to kind of relax. You got to calm down and, tread water or dog paddle or something, or float if you can float, whatever, but you got to calm down and move slow. If you start thrashing, you're doing a couple of things. You're making yourself go down. You're running out of energy faster. Now you're breathing in water. When you fight in there, that's what makes the person drown faster. The more they thrash and scream and panic, the faster they drown. The only way is to relax and realize I'm in a difficult situation. Let me calm down and just slow. Yeah.
But I don't think he gets that. Like he seems to think that America is this 1990s empire where we can do whatever we want. And in doing whatever we want, we can have a trade war against the world, that the world won't respond to us in kind, and that we can tolerate if they do respond to us in kind. I mean, it's very bizarre thinking. I mean, and it seems to be conflicted. So in one sense, he's like, okay, well, it's a new world. There's spheres of influence. So we want to get out of Russia and we want to pivot to China. Okay, right off the bat. You starting a war with China is ridiculous. Your own people tell you this is a non-starter. By the same token, he's like, I am also now going to have a trade war against the world. I am potentially going to attack Iran, which again is a worst outcome for the empire. All of these, like for example, the Ukraine war was one of those things that pointed out, hey, you don't have the power that you think you have. And yet, it seems oblivious to him and his team. I don't get why they don't see
it. Trump is neurotic and narcissistic, which means he is the perfect leader for the U.S. empire. It's a neurotic and narcissistic empire, right? So what neurotic people do and narcissistic people do is they have coping mechanisms. And they just keep doing them over and over and over. If you watch Trump, he does the same thing over and over and over and over. I mean, on a day-to-day basis. Well, I'm going to talk to the Russians. But if they don't do what I want them to do, smash them with more. Crush them with more. What about Venezuela? Crush them with more Iran. Let's bring in some big planes that we can blow them up with. And he just over and over and over. Now, he recently said, oh, yeah, I'm ready to talk to North Korean leader again. And I'm thinking, what planet are you? And who the hell wants to talk to you? Who's going to listen or trust the United States, period? Yeah. We've violated every treaty. Now, we're going to talk to North Korea. This is an easy prediction. He'll call North Korea. Hey, we want to have a talk. And North Korea is going to say, we really don't trust you. And he's going to say, we'll bomb them. We'll attack them. We'll blow them up. We'll tear them, draft them to pieces, secondaries. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
A person who has really pathological conflict resolution skills. This is Donald Trump's conflict resolution skills. Threaten, boister, and puff yourself up, which is perfect because that's all the U.S. empire ever does. That's what they did under Biden. Remember this? We're going to send nuclear subs to South Korea as a deterrent. We're going to send nuclear subs in the area of Iran as a deterrent. Everything is we're going to threaten because that'll deter. That's the conflict resolution skills of a brutal, vicious empire. Yes, a small child that doesn't know anything better. They're pathological, and so he's perfect. It's just his are more pure. If you think about it, he's like the perfect imperial leader because this is the purest, simplest version of what the U.S. empire has been doing. The problem is it works. It's like The guy who beats his big brother up all the time, and he wakes up one day and he's 16, his little brother, he beats his little brother up. He wakes up one day, he's 16, his little brother's 15, but his little brother's now 6'4", 220.
Right,
He's still
right.
5'11". And he says, oh crap. Right? Well, guess what? Now Russia and China are 6'4", 220, buddy. Iran's ain't a little, now all your big brothers. Now you got a little brother that if you push him, you may win the fight, but you're gonna win with a bloody nose and a swollen eye and missing 3 or 4 teeth. Is that a fight you really want? That's where he is now.
It's pathological arrogance. It puts you in the mind of the Brits when they were, the British Empire. But I think at one point there was a thing of soft power that could be used to deal with these issues, whereas that is off the table. And I think the problem I think your analogy is right. That, in the 1990s, okay, well, you can pull the stuff where you bomb Yugoslavia, right? Russia can't get involved. Nobody else can get involved. You can go into Iraq. Okay, again, nobody else can really get involved. This is not then. China is a major power. Russia is a major power. Russia just kicked your ass in Ukraine with all of the forces that you could array against it. They beat the shit out of it. And to make it even worse, you put all of the sanctions that you could, you did all of the economic stuff that you could, none of it matters. Russia's like number 4 in the global economy right now. You shot your load. And so any threat that you're applying to Russia ultimately doesn't matter, short of you going to nuclear war. In which case, it seems that at the very least, he's aware of that part. Like, okay, we shot our load on this. We need to get out of this. And we need to pivot to China, as if this is going to be somehow a better case scenario. The reason that China surrounded Taiwan was in part because Hegeseth was leaking a memo effectively saying we're going to pivot to China, we're going to effectively protect the separatists in Taiwan. Good luck with that. This is the exact same situation that took place in Ukraine, now just moved over to Taiwan. And maybe they think that, but see, this is different. Because this is not the separatists at this point. This will be the U.S. engaging China directly in a conflict. Like, all of these options are bad. And even with the Iranian option, there is no military option or solution to Iran that doesn't end up with either 50,000 American troops killed, Israel being totally bombed, the oil fields in some of these Quisling governments being completely destroyed, where the oil market just goes belly up. None of these are good options. And he seems to not grasp it, or is using bluffs, which when they get called, you lose all legitimacy. It's fascinating. I mean, you're right. It's an empire in decline with the guy in charge not necessarily knowing, or just going back to this most base, brutal way of trying to deal with the fact that the empire is collapsing. It's fascinating.
Well, this imperial collapse, one thing I like to look at is there are degrees of imperial collapse, right? And degrees of absurdity. Okay. Right now, you look at, and all these Americans are looking at France and the UK saying, these people are nuts. They're saying, we're going to send troops to Russia to stop Russia. How many troops you got? And the UK military is like, last time I counted, we got none. We can't send people over there, right? You got France, right? Oh yeah, we can get together 20 or 30 troops to take on those 700,000 troops in Russia, right? Yes, we'll send planes. You got any planes? We don't have gas for them right now. We're kind of broke, but we can send the planes as a deterrent. I don't know what the hell they're going to do, right? So, but people are looking at them saying, you're not rational. You know what I mean? You don't have the stuff to send. B, you couldn't maintain them and send all the weapons and things they needed. C, did I mention you don't have the stuff to send, right? So people are just looking at them and saying, you're not being rational. That's one degree of irrationality.
Yeah.
For those in the United States who are laughing and, sneering at them, is it any more irrational than our economic policy? Is it any more irrational? It's the same thing as the U.S. saying we can go 7,000 miles away and we can protect Iran. At the same time, think about this. Starmer will go and we'll stand up to the Russians. His military, yeah, we can't do that, right? Hegseth, we'll go deter and stop and fight Russia over Taiwan. The guy that's nominated to be head of the Joint Chiefs of Staff, just the other day said, yeah, we don't have the military industrial
Capability
power
to fight China. Yeah.
to fight. So the exact same thing. You got politicians saying we'll stand up to this world power, and literally the military is saying we can't do that. We don't have the ability to do that. So yeah, you know, you can look at them as irrational. It's the exact same thing. You've got Trump. I will bomb Iran like never before. And the people are like, yeah, but you know, they're going to hit just like these tariffs. You're going to punch. They're going to punch back. And when they do, you wipe out your whole presidency. Is that what you want to do? So basically, the U.S. is a mirror of its vassals. They're just a different degree because they're smaller or what have you like that. But are they any less rational than Trump's policies? We're going to dominate them. What do we have? Between 10 and 15% of like the world's economic power or something crazy like that of international trade. And we're going to use that 10 or 15% to dominate. The whole world could say, you know, let's just go ahead and clear ourselves of the United States and try to work this thing out on our own. And we would drop into obscurity and complete poverty. How do you back down? That's the next thing. When these things collapse, how do you back down from that? At some point, Trump, I think, has got to back down from that. And you know what? When he does that, to back down is to kind of wipe out his presidency too. It's kind of to admit, damn, I was really wrong on this one. Once you do that, do you have credibility for any of your major policies? He might have doing that could have been the end right there. Could have really destroyed himself. But we'll see. I don't know. You know, the Democrats are out there and they're going to do something far stupider and they have no credibility. So who knows? Like I said, could this be the rise of third parties or the rise of the oppression of third parties?
I don't know. I hope so. Because these two people are, these two are idiots. And I think you're absolutely right. It's a declining empire doing any and everything in its power to stem the decline while making it worse as it goes down. I mean, look, I'll give Trump credit for what he's trying to do. You know, he's trying to bring industry back into the United States. I think this is a stupid way to do it. You're effectively attacking the people at the lowest end of the economic scale during a time where you're about to run into an election. So fair enough, but Jesus Christ, over and over, all of these policies make no real sense in the real sense of the word in regards to what is in the best interest of America. And look, I would give Britain credit on some front. At some point, they realized, all right, we're no longer an empire, and we need to, you know, kind of nail things down back at home. And they unraveled the empire in the various countries that they were effectively in, and became more insular to themselves. I don't get the sense that the U.S. is willing to do that. And in fact, it seems like they're willing to end the world if it means losing hegemonic control. And that is going to be a dance they have to do with China in that sense, whereas these other countries are taking more, let's say, economic and industrial dominance in regards to the world. We'll see.
Well, you know, one, and this is sad, but you could say one thing that, because right now what we're looking at is how do you save the entire world from a crashing, it's gone from declining to collapsing empire, right? Yeah. It's gone from a disaster to a shambles, shall we say. How do we get out of that? Will be a nuke. One of the things is this. Yeah, they want to go struggle with China and get some nuclear conflict. They are trapped in Ukraine and they are trapped in the Middle East, even with no war with Iran, which I suspect it's bluff, really. I do suspect it's bluff. But even without that, they are trapped. There is no way. They are like, I don't see any way out of the Middle East, really. Ukraine, Europe is now really a conflict zone in the same way that they turned the Middle East into a conflict zone. Well, now they've turned Europe into a conflict zone, and they are trapped in these two conflict zones. And I don't see how they get out, because even if the so-called a war in Ukraine or the SMO ends, there's going to be hell to pay after that, because the Nazis are never going to go along with it. If somebody in Kiev gives them the order, okay, the war is over, they're going to say, like hell it is. They ain't going to listen to the people in Kiev. And then they're going to want revenge. So they'll be rampaging around Europe trying to, you know, shoot down civilian airliners or get their revenge on whoever they think is, you know, done them dirty. And so you got a mess in Europe for a long time. Then you're going to have people fighting it out in Europe saying you blew up our pipeline and we need to do something about the US blowing up. It's going to be a conflict zone, and we ain't getting out of either one of these conflict zones anytime soon to go struggle with China. I don't see that happening.
From your mouth to God's ears. I mean, they're definitely trying to pivot, bro. Garland, man, I always enjoy these conversations. I swear to God, the audience loves it also. Garland Nixon, political analyst, host of the Garland Nixon channel on YouTube. Garland, where else can people find you, by the way? I know on your channel you have multiple shows.
Yep. I'm on, of course, YouTube, Rumble, Rockfin. They can follow me on Telegram, Facebook, Instagram. And of course, they can email me, garlandin@gmail.com.
Badass. My man.
All right.
Have a good one, brother. Have a good one.
I'll be on at 10 a.m. this morning. I'll be on, let's see, 10 I got Scott Ritter, 12 I got Sloboda, and 3 o'clock I got Larry Johnson today.
Oh, you have a heavy foreign
heavy hitters, man. Yeah.
You have a good one, man. Be safe.
All right.
All right. Shout out to Garland. I'm waiting for Koffi. Koffi is about to come on. He's coming on in what time is it? Well, he should have been on by now. Hopefully he will be joining us. One of the things that Trump did was also slap tariffs on South Africa. Now, Trump has been aiming at South Africa, and Koffi has made the point that he strongly believes that part of the reason he's been aiming at South Africa is because of the ICC arrest warrant for Netanyahu that South Africa strongly pushed and effectively filed at the court. And so he believes that the association between, let's say, Netanyahu and Trump, or Israel and Trump, and the money that was dumped into Trump's coffers, into his G-string, was responsible for, let's say, these attacks that were taking place in South Africa, where they were saying, oh, they're slaughtering white people and taking their territory. Or some of the other things that he was effectively saying, where he pulled the money that South Africa was getting, and now the tariffs. Now, to be fair, the tariffs have been slapped on every country around the planet, with the exception of maybe a few. I think Russia and Ukraine were the ones that were left out of it. But either way, it is believed that these tariffs are somehow punitive. And, you know, I would imagine Koffi is going to make his point about it. But to be very clear, this is right here. This is a list of these tariffs. Chile, India, Israel, Brazil, China, Japan, Turkey, Vietnam, Pakistan, Thailand, Australia, Malaysia, Colombia, Sri Lanka. Sri Lanka is at 44%. 44%. Indonesia, 32%. Cambodia, 49%. Philippines, 17%. Switzerland, 31%. Bangladesh, 37%. South Korea, 25%. South Africa, 30% tariffs on South Africa. United Kingdom, UK, Keir Starmer showed his ass to Trump. Despite that, still 10% tariffs. European Union, 20% on the entirety of the European Union. That's astonishing. That's astonishing. Now, China, for its part, is not going to accept this. I don't think they're going to accept this. Now, China was in talks with Russia over the last. Wang Yi was there. Xi Jinping is apparently coming for the celebration, for the Victory Day celebrations. But Wang Yi was there having a conversation with his counterparts. And one of the things that they said should be noted. So this is Global Times right here. It says the China-Russia relationship poses no threat to any country in the world, nor is it subject to interference or influence by any third party. Highlight that part. The Russia-China relationship poses no threat to any country in the world, nor is it subject to interference by any third party. Okay, well, what does that mean? So if you remember, part of the objective of the United States was to break up the relationship between China and Russia, believing that if we're sweet to Russia, we can somehow pull them away from their relationship with China. This also goes into this idea of Donald Trump saying, well, I don't want to have to apply secondary sanctions, but I may apply secondary sanctions. Now, understand, these secondary sanctions would be against pretty much the world, because the gas that Russia trades with the world. And so you would have to put sanctions on Saudi Arabia, India, China, et cetera, which good luck with that. Here again, we're talking about effectively destroying America's energy markets because for the prices that we would have to pay in regards to the cost increases as a result of policy that Donald Trump is going with. They're making a point of saying, we don't care what you do. This relationship is not changing. We are as we were, regardless of the threats that you're putting out, regardless of the things that you're effectively saying, regardless of your bellicosity. This relationship is constant. This relationship is constant. Let's keep going. It sets a model for a new type of international relations between major powers in the modern era and a vital stabilizing force in a turbulent and changing world. This was Chinese Foreign Minister Wang Yi told RIA Novosti in an interview on Tuesday. All right, let's highlight that last part. It sets a model for a new type of international relations between major powers in a modern era and a vital stabilizing force in a turbulent and changing world. All right. The US, if you've noticed, the policy flips back and forth every 4 years, depending upon whether or not a new president is elected, whether or not a new Congress is elected. Joe Biden goes with this notion that we're in war forever, as long as it takes. Trump gets in and bam, overnight. We want to be friends with Russia. We want to make amends. We want to end this war, et cetera, et cetera. Okay, that policy is so herky-jerky. It's so uneven. And part of it has to do with the way the American political system is effectively set up. We're set up to have elections every 4 years. And so the notion of having consistency over time is not the easiest thing in the world to do. If Joe Biden comes in and wants to have a Build Back Better plan, okay, when Trump comes in, that plan is over with 4 years later. If Trump wants to come in and does the tariffs, 4 years later, these tariffs are over with. So why would a company that's in, let's say, Mexico, move from Mexico to the United States when they know that in 4 years, most likely, this stuff will change anyway? Especially if Trump destroys his presidency with an attack on Iran or even with these tariffs. China is making the point of saying, we are stable actors. We're stable actors. Our policy with Russia is not changing. We are constant. We are going to be here. This is not something that is going to change anytime soon. Here's another one. Wang made the point, 3 characteristics define current bilateral relations. China and Russia are friends forever, never enemies. Mutual respect and win-win cooperation, non-alliance, non-confrontation, and not targeting any third party in response to the question about China and Russia relationships, according to the press release from the Chinese Foreign Ministry. One of the interesting questions that comes out is, if a situation popped off where Russia was attacked, would China get involved? And the same thing the other way around. If the US decided to attack China, would Russia get involved? Now, for all of the peace overtures that Trump is effectively making with Russia, and yes, Kiev has been violating the ceasefire in regards to, or the moratorium on going after energy systems. Kiev is saying that Russia is also doing it. I don't know that to be true. I do know the case of Kiev because I can see it on video. If you can't cow your dog, then how do you make any negotiations going further? Like, if you can't do something basic as a ceasefire for only 30 days, how can we trust you for any negotiations as they take place down the line? Now, the catch is, between Russia and China, both of them know that if anything happens to one, it damages the position of the other. So I would imagine that if China is attacked, Russia would somehow aid China if it needs. And if Russia is attacked, China would somehow aid Russia if it needs. Now, in the case of Russia, they didn't necessarily need China to involve itself militarily, nor did it need North Korea to involve itself militarily. It did, however, need help with this thing of, we will sell you oil, in which case it was a massive boon to the Russian economy and, let's say, ensuring that it stayed constant over the course of the context of the war. And it wasn't just China, it was India, Saudi Arabia, effectively the BRICS nations that were willing to be involved in, let's say, acquiring these assets from Russia in a way that benefited Russia over the course of the conflict. China and Taiwan, with this notion of this pivot that Hegseth wants to do. I don't know, again, if this is Trump's bluster or if Trump is trying to use this kind of pressure campaign in order to make some kind of deal with China. But I don't think Trump realizes or accepts that Taiwan is a red line, every bit as much as Ukraine was a red line for Russia. And if indeed they're going with this pivot, there's a reason that China carried out those military exercises where they militarily surrounded Taiwan. The Separatist Party in that country decided, it's not even a country, it's part of China. But whatever, the Separatists may be feeling themselves over Hegseth leak, where he's like, yeah, we're going to pivot and we're going to protect Taiwan and all of this stuff. Are you really willing to go 10,000 miles to have a war with China? A war, by the way, that every war game showed that you would lose. And even recent military assessments pointed out you would lose. When Garland talked about a failing, collapsing empire, this is the exact example of it. This inability to accept your own limitations, this inability to come to say, okay, maybe we need to, somehow consolidate. Maybe we need to not be as provocative as we are, like a trade war with the entirety of the world. You have no idea how the entirety of the world is going to react to the fact that you're effectively waging a trade war against the entire world. You are one individual country. And even if you are a powerful individual country, this is nonsense. I still say, and I don't think I'm entirely wrong on this, some of the reporting that has been coming out showing that Republicans are slightly freaked out about the midterms right here, Political. Republicans are terrified of a wipeout in the midterms. As they should be. As they should be. The president of the United States that was elected on the notion of economic strength has found a way to decimate the economics of the various people in the country. And again, I point this out for Elon Musk running around as the world's richest man, attacking the poorest in the country, destroying institutions like Social Security, Medicare, Medicaid, or for that matter, the Health and Human Services thing with RFK, where 40,000 people have been fired. And yeah, those institutions are being undermined by the firing of those workers. How do you think that somebody who's 65 years old and decides to go on Social Security, how long would it take for that person to get on Social Security with all of these people being fired that was supposed to do the job of registering that person and ensuring that person got a check that they paid into for the entirety of their life? And beyond that point, as I pointed out, Musk is radioactive. And Trump, in regards to this tariff thing, when the prices go up, inflation goes up, and the Trump administration response is, I don't care. You should buy more American products. We will see how that translates into electoral politics. I get the sense that it's not going to translate well. I could be wrong. I could be totally wrong. But I don't get the sense that this is going to be something that the public is going to be okay with when they find the real world effects of how it affects and hurts them politically. Black in the Empire, loving this combo, met and talked with Garland a while ago, and he's a great person. Keep up the good work. Garland is fantastic. Garland's fantastic. One of the easiest people to talk to in the world. He's awesome. The ruling class flailing around trying to save the empire is like Kevin of The Office frantically trying to scoop all of his chili back into the pot. Good analogy. Good analogy. That is a damn good analogy. Yeah, this is the Richard Wolff argument, right? That the empire is collapsing. And as opposed to acknowledging that fact, you have all of these gyrations and movements and energy and all of this focus on something that the people are doing in order to try to, put the chili back in the pot, to take the analogy. And none of it works. You get competent governments in China, or for that matter, in Russia. And we don't seem to have a competent government. I mean, for God's sake, Trump is one of the dumbest people alive, if I'm being honest with you. And yet he wins an election. And he beats the stuffing out of the Liberal Party in order to win that election. That's amazing. For one, how bad the fact that the Democratic Party is in regards to there's no political opposition. And two, the fact that Trump was able to win in the first place after trying to overthrow the government the first time around. All of that is amazing. There's a level of political theater associated with it. Joe Biden banging away at a war that he fundamentally lost, the incompetence of what took place in regards to the Afghanistan pullout, Trump threatening Iran, which would be a mortal blow, not just for his presidency, but also, I would argue, in the same way that we cracked our tooth on Ukraine, we would crack our tooth on Iran. They don't seem to think so. And I think they believe they have a military capability or an economic capability that we don't actually have. We will see. We will see how this ripples through the market. We will see how other countries around the world accept it. China already is not going to accept it. The EU is already not going to accept it. They're going to try to make deals. If they can't come to some kind of agreement or deal, they will probably have reciprocal tariffs. Canada, I think, is just going to bend over, if I'm being bluntly honest with you. Shannon Baum in Mexico has said she is going to respond. I don't know what that response is going to be. Either way you look at it, and I will end it on this, and I'll go to the chat real quick. We are going to be paying higher costs, and we are going to be paying higher costs for the foreseeable future. And that price hike is Trump's price hike. It's not Putin's, it's not Xi Jinping's, it's not anybody else. It's entirely self-inflicted, and it is coming from one Donald Trump himself. I have a hard time believing that these countries are going to bend over for Trump in this way, especially world powers. We will see. I could be wrong. Sir Knight, this is going to hurt real bad. Yes. Car care, God bless America. God bless America. Indeed, we need it. Blex, U.S. market share of Chinese exports, 3 percentage points. Well, yeah. I mean, I get the sense that, look, if you're a Chinese, do you buy American products at this point? Just out of principle alone? If you are an American and you're buying a particular product, put it this way. When you go to Walmart, it's going up. It's going up. All that stuff is going up. All of that stuff is going up. Car care, Trump. I think they like Trump. Where's my stapler? I don't know where your stapler is. Adriana Black. Victoria Brown. I'd like you to explain one day how you became so interested in the world. Thanks. She's so ghetto, seriously. How I became interested in the world? I play chess. I think it's that. It's like, I played chess since I was a child. Since I was, Jesus Christ, 6th grade, I think. I was hooked. Hooked like a crack addict on crack. Hooked. Even when I was ill and in the hospital, I used to bring my chessboard with me and would just sit there engrossed because everything else was falling apart around me. I would imagine that anybody who plays on some level it's the political stuff. It's not so much, it's how countries engage with each other. And then if you start reading stuff about war, like my point of view for the stuff was defined by reading the Second World War first, then moving to the First World War. And you can kind of see the context of the world and the way it's shaped through those wars. I don't know. I mean, it just kind of evolved. It wasn't that way when I was younger. It just kind of evolved as I got older. But thank you for that. Calculating is different then dumb, spirit walk 108. Calculating is different than dumb. I agree with you on that. But if you are taking actions that are damaging the American population with the goal of giving the richest in your country a tax cut, is that, like, I get, your party is about to be wiped out. And it didn't have to be that way. Nobody voted for Trump to do this. It's almost like a cash grab. Like they're saying, okay, let's rape this country as much as we possibly can. And I know some people think, well, Donald Trump is doing this because he wants to ensure the American empire maintains. I'm very skeptical that Donald Trump is doing this for the best interests of America. I just am. I don't think he is. And let's see if there's anybody else. Fine home painting complicit. DS tanks. All commas and periods are important. All right. Koffi may not be coming, so I don't know what's going on with him. So I'm going to end this slightly early because I got to be honest, I'm dragging ass. My head is killing me. I want to thank all of you for joining me today. Shout out to all of you. I appreciate you getting up this early for the best damn morning show, as I call it. Who's your favorite Star Trek? Oh, don't do this. Don't do this. False dissident. False men dissident. Who's your favorite Star Trek villain? Oh, don't do this. That's a good question. They say the Cardassian. What is his name? I can't think of his name. He was the one that was running the Bajoran, the concentration, not concentration camp. He was running like the slave labor and everything else over Bajor. I can't think of his name. It'll come to me in a moment. Oh, I can't think of his name. Shit, you're gonna make me look this up. Let's see, Deep Space Nine, Cardassian, Bajor. What is his name? He was running the Bajoran occupation. What is his name? The one that was running the Bajoran occupation was a fascinating character. I don't know if he was my favorite villain, though. Because, I mean, in his own mind, he wasn't even a villain. But that guy, Dukat, thank you, Dukat. Either go Dukat or the Borg. How could you not love the Borg, right? Wolf 359 being one of the main pivot points where Star Trek effectively fundamentally changed. It's like they brought all those ships out there, the Borg just crushed all of them. And at that point, Cisco was like, all right, we need to start preparing for war. It's a little bit different. But I think I would choose Gul Dukat only because he was more of a complicated character than some of the other ones. I'm going to end this. I'm not going to go into a rant on Star Trek. Khan, a lot of people like Khan. All right. Kai Wynn wasn't. She didn't see herself as a villain. At least I don't think she did. I don't think she saw herself as a villain. All right, I'm going to end this before we get into this kind of thing. Yeah, the Borg were terrifying. To put it mildly. What's this, Mr. Ripley? In before you say Londo's corset. Londo was on Babylon 5. I didn't watch Babylon 5 until I got much older, like in my 30s or 40s. Yeah. All right, guys. You all have a fantastic day. Jamal Thomas signing off, episode 126. Have a good one. Be safe.